Part 95. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 975. He led everyone to an open space behind the camp, and saw that the kestrel eagle king in the iron cage was no longer as majestic as it was at the beginning, and its feathers that were originally like glass have now become dull. It can be seen that during this period of time, the condition of this big bird has reached an extremely bad level. Sensing Su Tong's arrival, the kestrel eagle king immediately let out a hoarse low sound, and its feathers exploded, standing high like a hedgehog. It flapped its wings angrily, trying to break free from the cage and fight Su Tong desperately. It's a pity that the dragon-binding talisman that Su Tong pressed on it was not a vegetarian. It didn't matter if it couldn't entangle him. Once it was entangled, it was impossible to break free no matter what the beast did. The guards saw the strange bird becoming more and more impatient, and they had to raise their swords and be on guard. "Boss, are you planning to operate on this guy?" When Gu Zibai heard that Su Tong was planning to deal with the kestrel eagle king, he hurried over with the cooks from the cooking team carrying a big pot, as if hoping that this beast would not know how to praise, so that they could have a big meal. Su Tong rolled his eyes at this guy, walked to the iron cage, and stared at the kestrel eagle king in front of him. "I know you are dissatisfied and think I am cheating. I won't bully you. This time it's just the two of us. I won't use any tricks. If you can withstand my 3 moves, I will let you go. If you can't, I will let you go live, stay with me and work for me for 30 years. The kestrel eagle king could understand Su Tong's words and nodded, no longer pretending to struggle. Seeing this, Su Tong pinched the magic formula with his fingers and removed the dragon-binding talisman that was bound to the red falcon eagle king. The moment the dragon-binding talisman dispersed, the red falcon eagle king in front of him suddenly raised his head, with his vertical pupils in his eyes. With a fierce look, his wings suddenly spread out, and a thick demonic energy exploded, blowing the iron cage into pieces. The huge shockwave caught Ji Zhou and others off guard and made them dizzy. Shua. At this time, I saw the figure of the kestrel eagle king as fast as wind and thunder. The strong wind brought by his wings made a long and sharp cry, and his sharp claws clawed at Su Tong's chest. Sure enough, he was smart. He knew he was no match for me, so he just struck first and forced me to block. As Su Tong flew back, he couldn't help but praise the beast's thoughts in his heart. This was what made Su Tong want to suppress it for his own use, just try the effect of the Nirvana Sutra. Su Tong's thoughts moved, he raised his hands and flashed his body. The figures were blurred. The seemingly slow pace made everyone around him feel out of touch with time. At the same time, he raised his palms, took steps with his knees, held the sparrow's tail, and used Tai Chi's boxing techniques. However, with the blessing of the Nirvana Sutra, the flow of time and the slowness and silence of Tai Chi formed a strange contrast. Holding up the golden eagle talons with one hand, the palm of his hand touched the kestrel eagle king. A gentle force made the kestrel eagle king feel as if his body was falling into a whirlpool storm. No matter how it flapped its wings, it was still, like a bird floating in Su Tong's palm. It can't advance, retreat, fly, or land. As Su Tong's body rose and he pushed up with one hand, this strange stance suddenly became unbalanced, and the kestrel eagle king lost control and fell to the ground. Su Tong stood with his hands behind his back and opened one hand, making the kestrel eagle king look frightened. It seemed that all the strength he had just now was suddenly resolved by this hand, and even the most basic flying could not be achieved. As the king of the sky, the kestrel eagle king can pass through storms and fly against the wind in strong winds, but he has never fallen so embarrassingly one day. For a moment, in the eyes of the kestrel eagle king, Su Tong must have cast some evil spell on himself again. To outsiders, it was even more miraculous. They watched the kestrel eagle king desperately flapping its wings in Su Tong's palm, but it could not fly up or down. The magical methods really opened their eyes. Only Gu Zibai on the side could clearly see that this was Ting Jin in Tai Chi. It is said that when you practice to the highest level, even a bird cannot fly out of your hand. In the early years, I saw in reality that some old people who had practiced Tai Chi for half their lives could make pigeons unable to fly in their hands. In contrast, the methods Su Tong displayed were far beyond this scope, and his control over the situation had reached an extreme level. So much so that even a creature at the level of the Demon King couldn't break free. This made Gu Zibai feel shocked and thought to himself, I can't achieve this state, and I'm not a person who focuses on martial arts. How can I do this? Learned it? This is the effect of the Nirvana Sutra. Su Tong discovered that this Nirvana Sutra was really extraordinary. He had only practiced the first level, which magnified his feelings of all subtle changes to the extreme. This Tai Chi listening skill requires a lot of time for Gu Zibai and others to practice, but he was able to easily master the trick through the blessing of the Nirvana Sutra. Of course, this is only possible with the help of his own Kakiao exquisite heart. One move. Su Tong looked at the Kestrel Eagle King in front of him with a smile. Seeing the Kestrel Eagle King's face full of dissatisfaction, Su Tong simply put down his palm, you come again, this time I won't even use the boxing technique just now. Facing Su Tong's contemptuous eyes, the Red Falcon Eagle King was really angry. The crimson feathers all over his body emitted a faint golden light. His wings suddenly rolled up, and a crimson sword energy shot out as his wings spread. Fight out. It actually knows how to use swordsmanship. Gu Zibai and others looked surprised. I saw the Kestrel Eagle King using its wings as a sword, and its body, which was taller than a human, stood upright and rushed towards Su Tong like a human. Its owner is the pinnacle of today's swordsmanship. In the battle at Luyuepi, Xiao Lishan only used one sword to kill Changkong Genren Zhangyishan, who was also an earth immortal. This shows how powerful the swordsmanship is. The Kestrel Eagle King follows Xiao Lishan every day and watches him practice his sword day and night. He has already learned Xiao Lishan's three-point sword technique. At this moment, his wings are spread out, and in front of him is a storm of sword energy that looks like thousands of feathered swords. This kind of swordsmanship made Gu Zibai on the side change his color. If I didn't use the Ad 9 Wushuang hook, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to take this sword. Seeing that the Kestrel Eagle King was planning to risk his life with his sword, Su Tong smiled, pinched the Vajra seal with his left hand, and the Great Compassion palm with his right hand. In an instant, an immovable Vajra Dharma appeared in front of Su Tong. Behind. With the blessing of the Nirvana Sutra, Su Tong found that his Buddhist magical powers had even more divinity that he had never seen before. Bang! There was an explosion, and Su Tong slapped the wings of the Kestrel Eagle King with his big hands. Dragon scales appeared on his arms. The huge power was like a dragon and an elephant adding to its body, making a violent sound of muscles fighting, as if a cannonball had exploded. Su Tong's palm, in front of the wings of the Kestrel Eagle King, was like a baby's fist, which would break into pieces upon collision and was extremely weak. But when the two came into contact, the Kestrel Eagle King not only failed to cut off Su Tong's hand, but his whole body was shocked. His body jumped back violently, opened his bloody mouth, and let out a harsh eagle cry. The sharp claws made a clanking sound on the ground, leaving several deep claw marks. But Su Tong did not retreat. Instead, he suddenly called out the Chun Yang sword, the third move is coming, you caught it. With the pure Yang sword in hand, the aura on Su Tong's body also surged. With the blade in his hand waving, and with the blessing of the Nirvana Sutra, the time in front of Su Tong began to slow down. He could vaguely see that the blade of his sword was about to trace trajectory. The stone slab that Yan Zioki gave him flashed through his mind, and he accidentally moved the sword's edge downward by 1 point. The change of just 1 point made the sword's intention become several times more powerful, and he stroked forward. There was a flash of cold light, and everyone did not see the sword energy. They were already shocked by the sword energy. It was only a moment, as if time had passed and several years had passed. Ah! The people watching were like this, and the Kestrel Eagle King felt the same way. He felt that countless sword blades penetrated his body, causing his flesh and blood to collapse and turn into a white skeleton in time. Suddenly unable to suppress the fear in his heart, he frantically flapped his wings to dodge backwards, but it was not a human after all, and the look of its two short-legged claws on the ground was too funny. His body tilted and he fell to the ground in embarrassment. When the Red Falcon Eagle King raised his head, he realized that Su Tong's sword had not actually been slashed out. The sword's edge was pointed at him, which already made him feel unbearable pressure. Su Tong held the sword in one hand, his blood boiling all over his body, and the murderous aura in his eyes seemed to be ready to kill the Kestrel Eagle King at any time. The cooks accompanying the army on the side were clutching their iron spoons tightly, and they were already wondering whether to braise such a big bird or make soup. Surrender or die. The same sentence spoken by Yeliki was completely different from the one spoken by Su Tong. Every word was like the scimitar of death being placed on the neck of the Kestrel Eagle King step by step. This sword completely shattered the pride of the Kestrel Eagle King. It probably never dreamed that someone could be on par with its master in the swordsmanship. Under the huge pressure, it could only carefully choose to lower its head. Seeing this, Su Tong quickly put away the pure yang sword, clasped his hands together, and aimed a mountain bow at the Kestrel Eagle King to knock him out again. Then Su Tong's breathing became rapid, and his whole face flushed. This was not because he was injured by the Kestrel Eagle King, but because he used the blessing of the Nirvana Sutra to forcefully imitate the sword intention on the stone slab, causing his internal organs and blood to surge, and he was almost going to be possessed. Fortunately, Gu Zibai on the side was also experienced. He knew what was going on when he saw Su Tong's condition, and quickly told everyone to stay away and hold their breath without disturbing him. Fortunately, Su Tong was determined. After adjusting his breathing a few times, he finally took a deep breath. He swept his backhand towards the ground and saw 4 more words on the ground. It was the name of the sword he had just comprehended. An Inch of Time. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 976. An inch of time is worth an inch of gold, but $1,000 cannot buy an inch of time. The sword intent of this move was so powerful that even Su Tong could hardly control it. Fortunately, after he stabilized, he carefully reviewed the changes in the sword intent just now and was able to digest the rest. As time goes by, you will slowly and completely master it. It is worthy of being the top practice method in Buddhism. If it were not for the Nirvana Sutra, I would not have been able to figure it out even in 3 to 5 years if I wanted to suddenly realize this sword. Thinking of this, Su Tong suddenly felt that those few notes seemed to be well spent. They are both monks, why is there such a huge gap? Su Tong was in a good mood. In order to compensate the cook in the cooking class for his wasted trip, Su Tong specially took out a grain of dragon rice and gave it to the cook, asking him to make a big pot of porridge for the brothers to eat. Gu Zibai hurriedly stepped forward to ask Su Tong about the power of Tai Chi and the secret of Su Tong's sword skills. Su Tong didn't hide this at all, and told Gu Zibai the clever part. After all, this was his brother, and there was no need to hide it. Su Tong even wished that Lao Bai would break through as soon as possible. He specializes in martial arts. If the two are at the same level, at least without using his trump card, he will never be Lao Bai's opponent. After all, Gu Zibai was a martial arts fanatic with extremely high understanding. Su Tong just pointed out the ingenuity of it. Gu Zibai was already as if he had found a treasure. His soul was so blessed that he no longer bothered to train soldiers and started to work on his own from behind. Gu Zidi started practicing boxing. Seeing this, Su Tong could only ask Ji Zhou to temporarily replace Gu Zibai. Looking back, he saw that the Kestrel King had already fallen asleep, so Su Tong simply carried it back to his tent. I plan to wait until this guy wakes up, then let him worship at the entrance of the hall, and then I can rush on my way and escape for my life. I finally have a good mount. But idleness is idleness. Seeing the kestrel eagle king sleeping so soundly, Su Tong suddenly couldn't help but want to enter its sleep to take a look, just as he was doing some ideological work for his mount in advance. He didn't think about it before because at that time, the kestrel eagle king's mental state was highly tense every day. Now that he was completely relaxed, it just gave him a chance to fall asleep. Su Tong put the cardinal eagle king away, and then activated the skill dream walk. As a ray of thought entered the consciousness of the kestrel eagle king, the dream of the kestrel eagle king was clearly displayed in front of him. Mountains, forests, and rivers flashed by in front of me. The sharp hawk's cry penetrated the sky. He was different from Su Fan, the uncle of the state, who was frightened every day and could hardly sleep. The dreams of the kestrel eagle king are almost entirely realistic, without any personal emotional processing, and are almost pure memory fragments. Maybe this is the difference between humans and animals. Even if they become demons, their thinking is still very simple, and they are not as susceptible to the temptation of too many desires as humans. At this time, the kestrel eagle king gradually slowed down. Su Tong also followed the kestrel eagle king's gaze and saw a pavilion built in the lake. The pavilion stood quietly on the water, and its reflection blended with the surrounding mountains. What surprised Su Tong was that there was a figure wearing a wide robe standing on top of the pavilion. When Su Tong wanted to get closer and take a closer look, he could only see a blurry outline. At this moment, Su Tong could feel the endless fear in the thoughts of the kestrel eagle king, as if the figure standing on the pavilion made him it didn't dare to wait and see. At this time, a figure jumped off the back of the kestrel eagle king. Su Tong saw that the figure was none other than Xiaolishan, but Xiaolishan's expression at this moment was much younger than what he had seen before at Luyuepi. I saw Xiaolishan jumping down, swinging the long sword in his hand, and the color of the sky and the earth changed for a moment, and everything in the world became a sword. Even the calm lake water under the pavilion was boiling, and beads of water as big as beans danced on the surface, condensing into countless sword shapes that are invisible to the naked eye. Seeing this, Su Tong was shocked, and he immediately realized that the scene before him was exactly 16 years ago, when Xiaolishan faced Zhang Xian. Unexpectedly, the kestrel eagle king was also there and witnessed the whole process. This battle was regarded as a shame by Xiaolishan, and the kestrel eagle king would not think about it often, but the sword intent of Su Tong's sword today was so strong that it made the kestrel eagle king recall all these bad memories. Out of mind. Facing Xiaolishan's sword, the man standing on the pavilion just raised his finger and drew a talisman in front of him. Boom! The golden light accompanying the talisman rose straight into the sky, and the next moment there was a huge tearing sound, the clouds tore apart, golden light flashed, the sky opened wide, and a sky-covering fist struck down with golden light shining on it. The fist fell quickly, and the huge force crushed Xiaolishan's sword intent, and then with a punch, Xiaolishan was smashed into the lake. The scene in front of him made Su Tong feel a huge shock. One talisman can defeat all kinds of magic. The strength of this immortal does not seem to be what the earth immortal can do. This idea coincides with what the kestrel eagle king wants. Immediately afterwards, the scene that humiliated Xiaolishan's life appeared. The fists in the sky were punched down one after another. After 2 punches in a row, all the water on the lake was emptied by the fists, and it was on the dry lake bed. Xiaolishan lay there with a messy face, vomiting out a mouthful of blood, and had no strength to fight anymore. He was defeated in just 3 punches. You can imagine how horrified Xiaolishan was at this moment. As expected of the heavenly master coming down from the mountain, Xiaolishan deserves to lose unjustly. Su Tong was shocked when he saw this. There were many rumors about 16 years ago in the world, but everyone said it was very vague. Most of them were heard from the road, and half of them were processed by themselves. There are very few true witnesses, and the Kestrel Eagle King is one of them. Su Tong took this opportunity to observe the detailed process of this station, and his heart could not calm down for a long time. One talisman breaks all laws. At this time, the Kestrel Eagle King wanted to rush down to protect his master. But at this moment, the figure standing on the pavilion slowly raised his head and gently raised his palm towards it. For a moment, Su Tong could feel the shock and despair of the Kestrel Eagle King in his heart. Seeing this, Su Tong's mind moved, and he activated the Nightmare Walker's ability to distort dream consciousness. The figure gradually merged with Zhang Xian on the pavilion, making the originally blurry shadow become clear, but the face had turned into that of Yang Hong. Appearance. I saw the big hand of the sky opening up, trapping the Kestrel Eagle King in the palm of my hand, making it unable to move forward or retreat, just like a kite with strings. From now on, you will be my mount. If the name Hungly doesn't sound good, I'll call you Thunder. You're as fast as thunder, how nice it sounds. The Kestrel Eagle King looked at Yang Hong on the pavilion in shock, feeling a chill coming, and he was about to wake up from his dream. In an instant, Su Tong opened his eyes, and his consciousness woke up from the consciousness of the Kestrel Eagle King. I saw the Kestrel Eagle King shaking his head, his eyes confused. After waking up, he felt very puzzled by the dream he had just had. At this time, it seemed to feel something. It turned its head and saw Su Tong lying on the soft bed beside it. He looked at it with half-lidded eyes and a smile. He slowly stretched out his hand to touch the head of the Kestrel Eagle King. Smiled at the Kestrel Eagle King, and said the same words in its dream just now. From now on, you will be my mount. If the name Hungly doesn't sound good, just call me Sun Li. It's as fast as thunder. It sounds so nice. This sound was almost the same as in its dream, causing the Kestrel Eagle King to tremble immediately, and his vertical pupils showed a human-like expression of surprise. With a smile, Su Tong took out a Ad9 reconstruction pill from the prop book and gave it to Sun Li in front of him. This time, Sun Li was very obedient and had no intention of resisting anymore. He took the pill honestly. Seeing this, Su Tong's face showed a look of joy. Okay, today is an auspicious day. From now on, you will become my disciple, and you will definitely benefit from it in the future. Su Tong said, took out 3 yellow incense sticks, flicked his fingers, and inserted the yellow incense sticks on the table. Using the yellow incense as a guide, the soul left the body and escaped into the hall behind him with lightning. On the way to Huaning Mansion in Beijing, in the back house of the Xiao family, there was a sudden sound of a glass being thrown, which made all the guards in the back house become nervous. Look again, no matter how many people there are, no matter where you are, if you can't find Hungly, don't come back. Xiao Lishan's angry voice, no one has seen him so impatient for many years. But it is understandable. After all, Hungly was Xiao Lishan's pet in captivity. They had been together since childhood and had a very deep relationship. Now they suddenly disappeared. No wonder Xiao Lishan was so anxious. After scolding him, Xiao Lishan finally calmed down and asked with a frown, "How is Chier's injury? Why did he stay behind closed doors as soon as he came back?" "To report to your Majesty, your Highness said that his injuries are no longer serious. He just suffered from the wind and cold. He asked someone to send a message and he will come to pay your respects to your Majesty soon." The butler lowered his head and said. Xiao Lishan's expression improved a lot when he heard this, but there was a lot of self-blame on his face. If I had known that this battle would turn out like this, I should have stayed or brought him back with me. "Don't worry, your Majesty, your Highness will be blessed with great blessings. He has saved the day from danger," the butler flattered carefully. "Go down and prepare some more supplements to send to him tomorrow. Tell him that after I finish this work, I will ask His Majesty to personally preside over the consecration ceremony of the Yuankai Temple. At that time, the Yuankai god will be invited to come in person to cleanse and cut his marrow, to help him break through the shackles and successfully achieve enlightenment. After the housekeeper nodded repeatedly to indicate that he had taken note of it, he turned around and left carefully. Only after the housekeeper left did Xiaolishan turn around and take out a box from the bookshelf behind him. The box was opened, and inside was the fortune calculation that the Dian Shenzong originally gave to the Xiao family. It was precisely because of this hexagram that the Dian divine sect exhausted its last luck and was swallowed up by the Yuankai divine section. Even the most precious treasure of the sect, the Dian heavenly disc, was obtained by Dijo. After opening it, there was a prophecy inside, which read clearly: the royal family has no bloodline, and the Xiao family has supported 3 dynasties. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 977. After being stationed in Hangzhou for about a week, the Emperor's imperial edict was also delivered. Not surprisingly, it was an exciting award. Each warrior can receive at least 5 taels to 10 taels of silver reward based on his military exploits. This amount of money may not sound like much, but it is no longer a small amount for ordinary soldiers. Their monthly military salary is only a mere 6 pieces of silver. Money is still secondary. In this victory, many people relied on military merit and obtained the title of Duke. With this title, it is equivalent to rising from a common people to the class of scholars. According to Tianqian's title level, he can enjoy an annual salary of about 50 dan, and at the same time, he will also have a hectare of land, a house, and a servant. In addition to public officials, there are also Shangzhou, Hairpinao, and Bujin, all of whom belong to officials. Many people in the army can easily achieve this with this military merit. But it's a little more difficult to go up higher, such as doctor, official doctor, public car, and 5 doctors. These 5 titles have changed from soldiers to officials. The 5 highest ranking officials, known as the supreme officials, were given 300 towns and families, which made them a proper landlord class. Not only did their family have food and housing, but they were also exempted from corvée and military conscription. Only those who came here could be considered poor. But even with such a big victory, there are only a handful of warriors who can get this title. Only Ji Yizhou and a few of the personal guards who followed Su Tong, with the support of Wu Ji, were able to obtain such a title based on military merit. As for other warriors, if they can achieve the goal of not changing, just have fun secretly. Of course, there are a few exceptions, such as Gao Zhou and Gu Zibai, both of whom have reached the rank of concubine. What surprised Su Tong the most was that besides himself, the person with the highest title in their team turned out to be the lucky boy Li Bo. Wu Ji's military merit memorials ranked his name at the forefront, and he was given the title of Young Master. It can be said that he soared to the sky and was promoted to 15 levels in a row. He served as the left forward and central defender under Wu Ji. If Su Tong hadn't won the title of Marquis in the battle at Jinwuguan, Li Bo would have been the person with the highest title and the most comfortable life in the team. Gao Zhou and Gu Zibai were speechless when they learned that Li Bo had a higher title than themselves. It really echoes the old saying in the workplace, those who immerse themselves in work will never be as good as those who work in front of the boss. Fortunately, this thing is just a false name. After all, they don't plan to spread their wings here. With Su Tong, the Xinwu standing in front of them, it doesn't matter whether their title is high or not. As for the rewards for the officers headed by Wu Ji and others, they will be given extra when they need to go to Linen Mansion to perform pilgrimage. So Wu Ji found Su Tong early in the morning and asked him to pack his bags and prepare to go to Linen City to face the saint. Su Tong's original intention was to take Lao Bai, Gao Zhou, and a few personal guards and go straight to Linen, but Gu Zibai got a side mission, the coach of the Tiger Guard. This side mission is for him to train soldiers here to improve their combat effectiveness to a new level. So Lao Bai simply stayed, studying martial arts on the one hand, and completing the mission on the other. Su Tong left him some dragon rice, which is very effective on the physical body and has excellent effects on his military training. As for Gao Zhou, this guy is even more reluctant to go. He picked up a lot of corpses on the battlefield, and now he was preparing to spend time refining corpses, and couldn't spare any time. Su Tong asked Wu Ji for help and temporarily transferred him to Yangzhou prison to be the cell leader. Although the prison there was not as resentful as Tian Lao, it was not a good place and it would be of no harm to him in refining corpses. After completing these chores, Su Tong said goodbye to Wu Ji first. After agreeing on a time to gather at Linen Mansion, Su Tong set off first. He did not take the official road with Wu Ji and others, but took the newly recovered Thunder and went straight to Linen City. I saw Thunder's wings spread high, soaring into the sky. Su Tong sat on it, his eyes slightly lowered, his mind as calm as water, and continued to meditate on the Nirvana Sutra, hoping to break through to the second level of the Nirvana Sutra before entering the hatch. Every time you break through a level of the Nirvana Sutra, you need to go through a test of Buddhism. However, the first level is not that difficult. Su Tong is sitting on Sun Li's back, his eyes are slightly lowered, and the Buddha's light appears on his body. The Buddha's light shines everywhere he passes, and the evil spirits retreat, and the momentum becomes stronger and stronger. Su Tong didn't care, and integrated himself wholeheartedly into the Nirvana Sutra. This Nirvana scripture has the word Nirvana in its name, and the method of practice is somewhat similar. Your soul is wrapped in the scriptures, and you are constantly reborn in Nirvana. Every time you experience it, your soul becomes more solid, and your thoughts become purer. Those distracting thoughts will continue to be shattered along with the process of Nirvana. As long as his thoughts are pure enough, Su Tong's perception of everything will become stronger and stronger, just like in myths and legends. The Buddha picked up a bowl of water and said there were 84,000 insects in it. Although it is a bit nonsense, it may be that the water in the Ganges River is too dirty. But the thought is strong enough, and Su Tong will see everything from a different angle. It is exactly this principle that I used the Nirvana Sutra to forcibly comprehend an inch of time. According to his conjecture about the Nirvana Sutra, if he could practice the sutra to great perfection, he might be able to penetrate into the origin of all things like the Buddha. Thunder's speed was very fast, and when he was about to reach Linen City, Su Tong let him go down, and then let him escape into his hall, so as not to be too ostentatious. After all, everyone in the world knew that the Red Bird Eagle King was Xiaolishan's pet, and they didn't know that he had snatched his love and forced him into his palace. Putting on ordinary clothes, Su Tong walked towards Linen, which was not far away. Linen Mansion is the real Hangzhou. Although the country is ruined and the family is destroyed outside, it is still prosperous and economically developed, far exceeding any era in Su Tong's other scripts. Before entering the city, a large number of merchant ships were already shuttled outside the city. Su Tong originally wanted to go directly to Linen City to feel the prosperity of Dakian, but before he had gone far, he heard the chatter of merchants coming from the carriage passing by. Tonight's Westlake New Year's Eve party, I heard that Fairy 18 will come to accompany us, and even Miss Yao Qing will be there in person. Let's not miss it. It's true, it's rumored that Su Qiaozu will come too, I can't say, he. When Su Tong heard that Su Lai was mentioned in the conversation between the two, he couldn't help but prick up his ears. This hearing really refreshed Su Tong's impression of the second best person in the world. Su Qiaodong had 28 concubines, regardless of their origins. It was no secret that as long as Su Qiaozu took a fancy to a beautiful woman, she would become a concubine. Completely different from the world's second best image in the world, in Linen City, the people's biggest impression of the Dakian god of war was that he was lustful. The glorious deed of marrying 12 concubines in 1 month became famous throughout Linen City. Every time he marries a concubine, the emperor must issue an edict, not to mention the concubine, even if it is a concubine, he must give her a good name. So this month the emperor directly issued 12 edicts, which was unprecedented and unprecedented. Not only that, this month can make the adults in the officialdom, those royal relatives and nobles, feel so distressed that they will cut their waists. If you have a good time with your wife, our hard-earned money for several years will be wasted. It is said that because of Sula's crazy concubine taking in the past month, the entire Linen City's economy has been in recession. Officials, dignitaries, and nobles all have to tighten their belts to live in fear of Sula marrying more wives. It was precisely because of this incident that Sula's reputation became somewhat unpopular. After that, he continued to take concubines one after another, and now he has 28 concubines alone. This does not include those who have no status. Therefore, in the eyes of ordinary people, Sula was completely a womanizer. After hearing this, Su Tong didn't know what to say for a while, but felt a little sympathy for Su Fan. No wonder this guy was on pins and needles every day, finally killing his competitors and turning himself into the only one in the Su family. As a result, his father suddenly transformed into a sowing machine, sowing seeds like crazy. Although it is said that Sula has the body of an earthly immortal, it is very difficult to have a child. Unless the woman also has amazing qualifications and cultivation, the probability is frighteningly low. Don't be afraid of 10,000, just be afraid of what happens. If that lucky guy shows up, as long as he is sure to be a man, Su Fan will die. This also reveals from another side how deeply Sula cares about his filial son. What a loving father and filial son. Su Tong sighed, and with the thought, he turned around and walked towards the West Lake, wanting to join in the fun and see what the second best person in the world looked like. What Su Tong didn't know was that at the same time he was lamenting the kindness of Su's father and his filial piety, Su Fan was riding on a flower boat, but his mental state was not very good at the moment. It's not even an understatement to say it's terrible. Ever since he came back from the front line, Su Fan had clearly noticed that there was something strange in the eyes of the surrounding slaves looking at him. Although it was very obscure, what kind of person was Su Fan? His mind was as fast as lightning. He immediately realized that his father's sewing machine had successfully planted rice. In fact, he already had this premonition when he left Linen Mansion to replace his father and go to the front line to appease the soldiers' morale. According to Sula's intention, he would have to wait until winter before coming back. By then, when everything has settled, Su Fan would be too late to take action even if he wanted to. But Su Fan never expected that Su Fan would leave so quickly. What is even more unexpected is that Su Fan not only left and returned quickly, but also won the first victory in such a battle, and was granted the title of Baron by the Emperor. Although the father and son have not completely broken up yet, they are getting closer and closer to that day. This made Su Fan sleepless again, plagued by nightmares and increasingly stressful. So much so that now there is little trouble, and Su Fan feels like he is facing a formidable enemy. I drank a glass of turbid wine, and the more I drank, the more depressed I felt. Just as Su Fan was getting more and more uncomfortable, the guards outside walked into the cabin. "Your Majesty, the way forward is blocked." "It doesn't make sense." "Yes." The guard looked a little embarrassed, but under Su Fan's gaze, he still said bravely, "Master, he has several close friends coming, so he wants to compete with them in martial arts at this New Year's Eve dance. Non-martial arts practitioners are not allowed to enter, so the waterway in front is blocked." Boom. Hearing this, Su Fan lost his face, threw the wine glass on the table to the ground, and cursed, "This old guy, isn't it enough to marry so many women? Any close friends are all bullshit, give it to me, bump it away and rush in." "Your Majesty." The guard's expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly knelt on the ground, "Your Majesty, you must not do this, this is against the rules." Your uncle's rules, I am the rule. That scoundrel hasn't even been born yet, and I am still the eldest son of the Su family. Su Fan's face became more and more distorted, and he rushed out of the cabin to the deck with red eyes. Looking at it, sure enough, the waterway in front of them has been blocked horizontally by 3 large ships, and ordinary ships are not allowed to enter at all. Many people came by boat, only to return disappointed. Standing on the deck and looking around, the water in front of them suddenly became more and more congested. "You guys, get out of my way." Su Fan's face was full of alcohol. He pointed at the defenders blocking the waterway in front of him, and shouted loudly. The people watching around him obviously recognized Su Fan, and they all raised their heads to watch the excitement. Seeing that it was the eldest son of the Su family, the guards suddenly looked embarrassed. At this moment, a burst of laughter came. It turns out that it's the uncle of the country. The uncle of the country is here. We don't dare to block the way, but this time Mr. Kiwazu personally ordered that no one who has cultivated Taoism is allowed to enter, so I ask Mr. Guo not to make things difficult for us. On the deck of the big ship, a middle-aged man dressed as a scholar wearing a high hat waddled forward. As soon as Su Fan looked at this person, he became even more angry. He pointed at his nose and cursed, "You dare to stop me with the surname Lu? How long do you think that little bitch like your sister can protect you?" When Su Fan greeted him in public, instead of being angry, the other party said proudly, "Hey, I won't bother my uncle to worry about this matter. My sister can protect me as long as she can, but I don't know about Queen Su. How long can I protect you?" Su Fan's face turned pale as he was stabbed in a sore spot by this person. His sister was the empress of the emperor's palace, but she was just a victim of politics. Neither the emperor nor his father had ever looked at her. Once that bastard is born, if Su Lai wants to kill him, his sister will never be able to protect him. And that evil seed fell into the belly of his sister Lu Ji. Therefore, this dog thief named Lu knew the secrets of their Su family, so he dared to be so arrogant and domineering in front of him. Facing the ridicule of Lu, Su Fan's face turned pale. I don't know if he was drunk or because he was under too much mental pressure during this period. He was so angry that his vision went black for a while. When his body tilted, he wanted to fall off the deck and fall into the water. At this critical moment, Su Fan suddenly felt a warm hand on his back grab his shoulder, and with just a gentle pull, he regained his footing. "It's only been 2 months since I last saw you. Why are you in worse shape than before?" There was a hint of calm and self-confident righteousness in the steady voice, so familiar that Su Fan couldn't help but shiver all over. He opened his eyes and looked to his side. Sure enough, under the hazy sunset, Yang Hong's resolute body appeared. Zi is like a god rescuing people from distress, descending beside him. At this moment, Su Fan suddenly felt the palm falling on his shoulder. He had never felt more at ease than before, as if all the haze in his heart would be swept away in an instant. In a daze, Su Fan thought of the majestic figure in his dream, and blood surged out of his heart, and he shouted with tears in his eyes, "Brother Yang." Su Tong was a little embarrassed by Su Fan's sudden enthusiasm. He took a step back calmly, fearing that this guy would jump up and hug him. Although he liked being a pilot, it didn't mean that he liked landing at an airport with anti-aircraft guns. Su Fan also realized that he was too excited, so he immediately restrained his emotions and bowed to Su Tong in front of him, "Greetings to Marquis Shenwu." Su Fan's bow surprised many people. These 3 words, Marquis Shenwu, are definitely the focus that has been talked about the most in recent times. Whether it is in the arena, the court, or among the people, Yang Hong, a newly rising star, brings too many topics. News about slapping the northern barbarian crown prince, kicking the leader of a cult, leading a lone army deep into the country, cutting off food routes, serving as bait, even Xiao Lishan went south for him, and holding an innate divine fetus, etc. Every one of them is so exciting that it makes people feel like talking about it over and over again. Not the kind that's addictive. Unexpectedly, the Marquis Shinryu that everyone was talking about would appear in front of everyone. For a moment, the people around him who were blocked here raised their heads, wanting to catch a glimpse of Marquis Shinryu. "You're welcome, uncle. I haven't seen you for a long time. I didn't expect to meet you here. It's really fate." Su Tong responded with a smile. In fact, he came by boat and was stuck here. He had no intention of getting involved. When he was about to leave, he heard Su Fan's voice. So when he took a look, he found that Su Fan's luck had hit rock bottom at this moment. His luck was shrouded in a dark cloud, and a candle light was already swinging left and right in his luck. As the saying goes, when the moon is dark and the wind is high, the soul is broken. This is a sign of sudden death. Su Tong had watched Su Fan's dream and knew that he and Su Lai were not on good terms. Now that he saw that he was in danger, he had no intention of not saving him. So the scene just now happened. Looking again, I found that although Su Fan's luck had eased, I could see that his luck was no longer as prosperous as when we met at Langshan. Instead, it was covered by dark clouds. Looking at Su Fan's haggard expression, Su Tong immediately had an answer in his mind. He immediately grinned and reached out to pat Su Fan on the shoulder. "Since we have met, and brother Su is hosting, how about we go in and have a meal?" When Su Fan heard that Su Tong had changed his name, he felt ecstatic in his heart. Okay, that's exactly what I meant." After saying that, his face turned cold and he glared at the bastard named Lu in front of him. "Marquis Shinryu is here, why don't you get out of the way?" Lu Yanfang was jumping for joy when she saw Su Fan was about to lose his footing and fall into the water. Unexpectedly, a man suddenly jumped out and rescued Su Fan. She suddenly became very angry. When she heard Su Fan's words, she even sneered, "What Shinryu is, I don't recognize it, so you just say it is." After the words fell, Lu Yanfang suddenly felt a chill rising all over her body. She glanced sideways and found Su Tong staring at him coldly. He just looked at each other and felt like he was about to lose his mind and fell down on the deck. Was so scared that he peed his pants. "He is Lu Yanfang." Su Tong raised his head, feeling more and more disgusted with this person. This disgust was not his own emotion, but the anger of the character he played, Yang Hong. This is not difficult to understand. In order to let his brother-in-law gain military merit, Su Lai asked him to serve as a vanguard general under Wu Ji. Who knew that this guy was so bold, brainless, and idiotic? He thought he had read a few books on the art of war. He is an extraordinary general. The result was that they led 30,000 forwards into Xiao Kai's encirclement. What's even more irritating is that Lu Yanfang, as the forward leader, saw that the situation was not good and actually asked the masters around him to take him away. 30,000 troops were left behind for the northern barbarians to slaughter. This kind of person can't vent his anger without Ling Qi. As a result, Na Su Lai said that victory and defeat are commonplace matters for soldiers, and he passed them lightly. If you were Yang Hong, you would be willing to tear this person into pieces. Therefore, Su Tong certainly didn't have a good look on this person. He snorted coldly and raised his hand to strike at him with a sword. Presumptuous. Seeing Su Tong's sudden move, a black shadow stood in front of Lu Yanfang. This man was probably in his early 50s. He opened his hands and a sword came out of his sleeves and stood in front of Lu Yanfang, trying to catch it. Tao sword energy. With a soft sound of boom, the entire water surface suddenly rippled, causing the surrounding boats to almost be overturned. The jaws of this man's hands had been torn apart, and he was half kneeling on the ground, with a face like gold paper. Su Tong raised his eyebrows slightly and looked up and down. Unexpectedly, the opponent, who was at the peak of his Taoism, actually blocked his sword energy. "Brother Yang, this person's name is Chang Xiaoqing. Although his cultivation level is not high, the sword in his hand is extraordinary. Su Fan whispered on the side, explaining why the other party was able to block his sword energy. Chang Xiaoqing stood up with trembling legs, cupped his hands toward Su Tong and said, "Greetings to Marquis Xinwu." Although Marquis Xinwu has repeatedly performed extraordinary feats on the battlefield, under the Emperor's feet, for Marquis Xinwu to kill people in public would inevitably break the laws of heaven, treat it as nothing. Chang Xiaoqing knew in his heart that the sword energy just now was just a casual strike by Su Tong without any effort. If he didn't rely on the sword to protect himself, he might have been cut in half at this moment. Even so, Chang Xiaoqing only felt that his energy and blood were surging at this moment, and his internal organs felt as uncomfortable as being pricked by needles. He endured the internal injuries and moved out of the court laws to make Yang Hong have some scruples. But Chang Xiaoqing didn't know that Su Tong was not a general from a wild background and could be frightened by his words. On the contrary, if you want to show off your official authority and buckle your hat, Su Tong was possessed by Li Zheng on the spot. His expression became serious, and he scolded in a cold voice, "How dare you? I am the great general of Pingbei, granted by the Holy Emperor. Who are you? Do you have an official status, title, or fame?" These words were full of official authority, shocking the mind, and going straight to the point. Chang Xiaoqing's heart tightened, and his aura suddenly weakened. He shook his head and said in a deep voice, "I am the Lu family's guard, and I should have a protector responsibility." At this time, Su Tong's lips showed a sinister smile. "Oh, it turns out that he is just a domestic slave. He is so bold. He sues the government with the people and slaps him for 30 years according to the law." As he spoke, Su Tong suddenly raised his palm and flew towards Chang Xiaoqing. Chang Xiaoqing's expression changed greatly, and he instinctively raised his knife to block, but suddenly he heard Su Tong sneer, armed with a dangerous weapon, trying to assassinate an important official of the imperial court. This is regarded as rebellion, and should be executed according to law. What? Chang Xiaoqing's eyes widened, and then he saw Su Tong lifting his finger lightly, and a sword energy passed through his throat in an instant. His eyes suddenly turned around. When Chang Xiaoqing saw his headless body, there was a plop sound, and my head fell into the West Lake. Sorry, it's a little late today. I really feel sick to my stomach. I don't know what I ate. I feel very nauseous and feel like vomiting. It's very uncomfortable. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 978. Everyone was dumbfounded as they watched the huge human head on the lake sink into the water little by little until it disappeared. Who would have thought that the emperor would walk on this ground? This Shen Wuhao said he would kill people, but the people he killed were the Lu family. This was too crazy. But despite being arrogant, everyone thought carefully and couldn't find anything wrong with it. Marquis Xinwu was personally consecrated by the Holy Emperor and held a second-rank official position. He was indeed an important minister of the imperial court. Chang Xiaoqing, who had no title or nobility, was holding a knife against him. He was suspected of violating the prohibition. He even pointed the knife at Marquis Xinwu. The Marquis Xinwu killed him. He is really not unjust at all. Of course, this is what the law says, but the law is dead and people are alive. The law has always dealt with people and things. The Lu family itself is a wealthy family in Linen, and it is even more lawless to have climbed onto the high branches of Suqiazu. Lu Yanfang has caused such a big disaster on the front line. If it is true, it would not be an exaggeration to punish all 9 of his clans. It's not like there's nothing wrong with him, but who would have thought that Marquis Xinwu would be so disrespectful? After killing Chang Xiaoqing with one sword, Su Tong looked sideways at the frightened Lu Yanfang. His eyes could no longer hide his anger. He stepped forward, raised his boots, and stepped on Lu Yanfang's chest. My 30,000 brothers in the vanguard have suffered countless casualties, and many of them have their bones buried in the wilderness. How can someone like you still be able to enjoy the good life and dominate here? Su Tong stared angrily and questioned sternly, causing Lu Yanfang to breathe directly into his chest. Great fear enveloped his whole body and he screamed, I, the Holy One, has forgiven me, Mr. Kuazu has punished me. When things came to a close, Lu Yanfang couldn't even speak clearly. She looked like a lost dog, which made everyone frown. They didn't know why such an idiot was allowed to fight on the front line in the first place. Su Tong even smiled coldly, the Holy One can forgive you. That is the benevolence of the sages. You are not ashamed of a fool like you, but you are proud of it and show off your power everywhere. You have really tarnished the Holy One's benevolence. You can't forgive me also. The more Su Tong spoke, the angrier he became. He kicked Lu Yanfang away with one kick. Su Tong controlled the force of this kick extremely well. He lifted Lu Yanfang up in the air. Under the gaze of everyone, Su Tong raised his hand and struck out with a sword. The light struck up and chopped off Lu Yanfang's head on the spot. They saw rain of blood splashing, dyeing the water red, and everyone's minds were in turmoil. Many scholars looked at this bloody scene and turned pale with fright. Everyone knew that Marquis Xinwu had outstanding military exploits, but they didn't expect that his murderous nature could be so ferocious. Su Tong grabbed Lu Yanfang's head with his big hand, turned around and walked to Su Fan's side, looked at Su Fan sideways and said, Brother Su, don't be offended. Killing this person was my impulse and has nothing to do with Brother Su. If Brother Su is inconvenienced, you can leave on your own. Su Fan looked at the human head in Su Tong's hand and immediately woke up. Hearing this, he was even more excited. His mind immediately turned around and his expression straightened. Brother Yang, what do you mean? This thief, he harmed the soldiers, but the saint was merciful, and instead of repenting, he tarnished the holy name. His crime deserves to be punished. Even if this matter is brought before the saint, I will advance and retreat together with Brother Yang. Su Fan spoke righteously, and his heart was already filled with joy. Yang Hong killed Chang and Lu in public, and gave him a bad breath. Moreover, the slap was not on the saint's face, but on his own father's face. How could I be unhappy? It was too late to set off firecrackers to celebrate. As long as he held Yang Hong's thigh tightly, it would not be easy for his father to kill him. More importantly, Su Fan didn't know why, but when he saw Yang Hong, he felt extremely at ease, as if he was protecting him even if the sky fell. Anyone who dared to provoke Lu Yanfang would be punished. He immediately said that he would advance and retreat together with Yang Hong. If his father could save the idiot Lu Yanfang, he could risk his life to save the General Xinwu Hao. And this result was exactly what Su Tong wanted. If he kills someone in public, the worst he can do is lose his military honors. But he may be able to get the support of Su Fan, his uncle, so that he will not be left alone and helpless in the court. As for this move, which must have offended Su Lai, since he had decided to form an alliance with Su Fan, how could he be hesitant and try to please both sides? Brother Su is a righteous man. I represent the 30,000 forward soldiers. Thank you very much, Brother Su. Su Tong bowed his hands, and Su Fan hurriedly helped him. The tacit cooperation between the two caused everyone around him to applaud, thinking that this was much more beautiful than any other poem. Brother Su, since this is an annual poetry meeting, and Su Kuazu wants to make friends with martial arts and talk about martial arts, we might as well join in the fun and let everyone see clearly. Su Tong pointed forward with one hand, held Su Fan's wrist with the other hand, and said with a smile. Su Fan was actually a little frightened. After all, when he saw his father, it would be a lie to say that he was not afraid at all. But seeing Su Tong's fiery gaze, Su Fan knew that he could not retreat. Yang Hong killed people in public. He said he was just for justice, but he was also standing up for me. If I have the intention to quit at this time, I am afraid that Yang Hong will look down on me and abandon me. When Su Fan thought of this, he immediately gritted his teeth and said, "Okay, today Su and brother Yang will go in and have a look." After saying this, Su Fan turned back to look at the guards blocking the way, and snorted coldly, "Why don't you get out of the way or wait to die?" Now that Lu Yanfang and Chang Xiaoqing had been killed by Marquis Shenwu, these guards dared not interfere anymore, so they immediately moved the boat away and let Su Tong and others go to Xiaoyingzhou. As soon as the opening was opened, the others certainly didn't want to miss the excitement, and they all urged the boatmen to rush in after Su Tong and others. This small Yingzhou island stands on the water of the West Lake. It is an island in the middle of the lake. There are 3 bottle-shaped stone towers built deep in the water of the lake, called Santon. The so-called beauty of West Lake, 3 pools mirroring the moon, comes from this. The pavilion and arch bridge on the island are picturesque, and now they are even more decorated with lanterns and colorful decorations. The 18 fairies from Sijiaofang are sitting on the island, playing the piano and playing music. The music is light and moving, and it is so beautiful. In the Yingqi pavilion, the princes, and dignitaries were drinking and conversing, and all the important officials in the court were among them. There are also many strangers in the world, changing cups, giving a scene of prosperity. After the great victory at Langshan, the northern barbarians will not be able to relax for at least the next 10 years. As long as we wait until next year to submit a letter and send envoys to the northern barbarians, we will definitely take a bite out of them. Qian Feng, the Minister of Rights, was so drunk that he couldn't help but uttered lofty words, which attracted everyone to applaud and praise him as a true national scholar. The northern barbarians annexed Suankan and occupied the granary of the Central Plains. We cannot allow them to become bigger and stronger. We must seize several major grain-producing provinces in the hinterland of the Central Plains. Yanfu, the Minister of Household Affairs, frowned and vaguely reminded everyone that the Central Plains cannot allow the northern barbarians to live for a long time, but everyone just smiled scornfully. No matter what, their Tiangan is also a rich land with strong troops and martial arts. If they can defeat the northern barbarians once, they can defeat them 2 or 3 times until they drive the northern barbarians back to the bitter cold land. Yanfu, the Minister of Household Affairs, saw everyone's disapproval and cursed in his heart, "A bunch of idiots." This hinterland of the Central Plains, especially the sacred city of Luoyang, has been a battleground for military strategists since ancient times. This place contains great fortune, but the strong ones become stronger and the weak ones become weaker. Barbarians are like wolves and dogs. After this defeat, they will definitely prepare for revenge. In addition to the food, craftsmen, and population of the Central Plains, as long as the northern barbarians are willing to domesticate them, within 3 to 5 years, there will definitely be another army of tigers and wolves. However, this helped mediocrity, but you can't see the trouble in it. Yanfu wanted to remind him again, but no one paid attention to him. On the contrary, it was the boasts of several people led by the Minister of Rights that won the applause of the whole hall. Qian Feng stood up and said, "This victory at Langshan, everyone said that the first contributor was the Commander-in-Chief Wu Ji, but Wu Ji was just a martial artist. We are here today, thanks to the teachings of Mr. Qiaozu. As the saying goes, great teachers make great disciples. If it weren't for Mr. Qiaozu, who holds the world in his hands and plans thousands of miles away, there would be no sound of today's great victory. Everyone, let's raise a toast to Qiaozu. A cup for me. That's right, thanks to Master Qiaozu for strategizing, I'll give Qiaozu a drink." Everyone stood up one after another and faced the east. Behind the curtain of the pavilion, they saw the face with the Chinese character slowly raised. It was like a crown jewel, with black hair and thick eyebrows. It looked like he was only in his 40s and in his prime. But in fact, according to age, the real age of this Qiaozu master is already more than 10 years older than Wu Ji. It's just that his cultivation has reached the realm of earthly immortals, not to mention eternal youth, but his appearance of aging is almost negligible. Although Su Lai didn't take it seriously in the face of public praise, the smile on his lips still made people feel that he was in a good mood. Just when everyone was talking and laughing, a guard came in a hurry with a pale face and lowered his head. He walked carefully in front of Su Lai and whispered a few words. The smile on Su Lai's face instantly froze. Everyone was drinking and chatting happily when they saw that the host and guest, Su Lai, looked wrong. In an instant, everyone present became silent and silently turned their heads to look this way. After a moment, Su Lai waved his hand to ask the guards to retreat, then glanced sideways at everyone. His calm and confident aura made everyone's hearts lift. Just when everyone didn't know what happened, the serious look on Su Lai's face suddenly disappeared and was replaced by a chuckle. Marquis Shinwu is here. Everyone was startled and immediately looked at each other. The three words Marquis Shinwu are like thunder. The emperor has summoned Wu Ji and others to the court. I didn't expect this person to arrive so soon. In surprise, Su Lai's next words made everyone explode. Our Lord Shinwu is so murderous. He killed Lu Yanfang before he even entered the imperial court, Su Laipi said with a smile. As soon as these words came out, everyone changed their minds. Qianfeng even stood up, looking shocked and angry, and shouted, "This son is simply arrogant, deceiving the king and neglecting his superiors. He has committed a heinous crime and deserves to be." Before Qianfeng could finish his words, he suddenly felt the surroundings quiet down. He found that everyone's eyes were widened and turned to him, and a bad feeling suddenly enveloped his whole body. Qianfeng couldn't help but swallowed and felt all the hairs on his body stand up. When he looked back, he saw a young man holding a huge head behind him and looking at him with a smile. "My lord, continue, I will also wants to hear how you can punish me." Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 979. Hiss. Qianfeng took a breath in his chest, and felt that the person in front of him was covered in blood and filled with murderous aura, which made him feel as if he had fallen into hell. The blood in his body was cold, from the soles of his feet to the top of his head. For a moment, I was filled with anger, but it was completely stuck in my throat and I couldn't say a word. When Su Tong saw that he was silent, he walked forward with a smile, stretched out his hand and put Wu Yanfang's head in Qianfeng's arms. "Please help me take it." Although the voice was soft, the words were as heavy as a mountain of stone. They pressed on Qianfeng's shoulders, making his whole body muscles tense, and he did not dare to move while holding the head. Su Tong strode over and looked at the number 2 person in the world in front of him. The moment the two people looked at each other, a strong wind blew up in the air and swept across all directions, making the civil and military personnel of the court feel breathless. Several foreigners who were treated as guests by Su Lai were even more shocked. They felt the unstoppable murderous aura in Su Tong's body, and they were all terrified. What a murderous god, no wonder he has gained a great reputation on the frontier. Su Lai smiled and began to praise, as if Su Tong's killing of Wu Yanfang was a trivial matter to him. I saw Su Lai opening his palms and waving his sleeves lightly, and a warm aura spread out, allowing everyone to relax from the strong sense of oppression just now. "Thank you, Lord Kuazu, for the compliment." Su Tong stood up straight and cupped his hands slightly. "Marquis Shinwu is the hero of this great victory at Langshan. You are a rising star in the world. Jianghu Baixiaosheng has ranked you 5th, tied with Master Zhu Yang. Today is just the right time. You might as well sit down and talk about it." Su Lai pointed to the seat next to him, with a pleasant expression that made it difficult to tell whether the Kuazu Lord was angry or happy. At this time, Su Lai's eyes changed, his face suddenly turned ugly, and he frowned and said, "What evil are you doing?" The evil obstacle that Su Lai mentioned was no one else, but Su Fan, who followed Su Tong. Su Fan was used to being reprimanded by his father in public, but for some reason, he felt particularly painful today, especially the look and gloomy look his father cast on him, which made him want to kill him on the spot. Su Fan took a deep breath, raised his head and responded with a cold face, "My child is paying homage to my father. My father is hosting a banquet here. My child also came to join in the fun and offer a toast to your uncles. In addition, Shin Wuhao has a close relationship with my child. The child specially brought him here to introduce him to his father." When Su Fan said this, the officials present who did not know the inside story suddenly became much more relaxed. After all, Su Lai would never let the news about the Su family spread out. If outsiders knew that his eldest son had committed the crime of matricide, it would be a huge blow to Su Lai himself. So even Lu Ji, who was once again pregnant with Su Lai's flesh and blood, only knew that Su Lai hated Su Fan extremely, but she didn't know the root cause. In the eyes of outsiders, Su Qiaozu hates iron for not being able to become steel. In Su Lai's heart, he had no idea how many times he could not help but cut this evil beast into pieces. At this moment, Su Fan behaved politely, and everyone just thought that he had enlightened, and started to praise him one after another. Su Lai clenched his fingers for a moment and glanced suspiciously at Su Fan and Yang Hong, only to see that Shin Wuhao actually took Su Fan's arm and sat on the seat next to him. The cordial look between the two of them made Su Lai's nails dig deep into his fists. "I heard from brother Su that it's so gratifying to congratulate you, Mr. Qiaozu, that you have a son at this old age. When the child is 1 month old next year, I will ask Mr. Qiaozu to give me a glass of full moon wine so that I can feel happy too." Su Tong raised his glass with a smile and tipped it towards Su Lai. As soon as these words came out, everyone was shocked. They didn't know this yet. After hearing Su Tong's words, they immediately raised their glasses and toasted to Su Lai. Su Lai was very happy on the surface, but when he raised his glass to drink together, a coldness flashed across his eyes. At this moment, a pleasant sound of playing the piano suddenly sounded on the lake. "Hey, it's that Yao Qing girl who's coming out." Everyone raised their heads. On the lake, I saw a painted boat approaching from a distance. The boat was decorated with lanterns and colorful decorations, with yellow paint on the top and carved beams and painted pillars. When the boat approached, I realized that even the characters on the lanterns were lifelike. The posture is touching. It can be seen that the painter of this lantern has a high standard and is already at the level of a master. The sound of the piano came from the boat. Just listening to the sound of the piano is like the sound of nature, changing from vague to clear, echoing on the lake. Whether it is tourists on the edge of the West Lake or scholars coming by boat, they all stop what they are doing and listen in rapt attention. The Guqin player's technique is exquisite, which is rare in the world. The sound of the Guqin he plays is mellow, sometimes like the sound of pines and waves in the valley, sometimes like the sound of the empty valley, and there is no trace of noise between the ups and downs. Even Su Tong couldn't help but feel a little trance when he heard it. He felt that the sound of the piano had a strong Taoist charm, which could wash away distracting thoughts in the mind and make people's thoughts clear and enlightened. As expected of a Yaoqing girl, she is a master of piano and painting. Even Su Fan, the prodigal son next to him, was rare and serious. He was full of praise for this Yaoqing girl, but he did not dare to have the slightest thought of blasphemy. After a long time of finishing the song, the sound of the piano echoed, and the lingering sound was faint and lingering, and everyone by the West Lake was already fascinated by it. As soon as the boat approached Yinkiting, everyone woke up and stood up to greet it. "What's the origin of this bitch? Isn't she just a chicken?" Su Tong lowered his voice and asked Su Fan aside. Su Fan's face changed slightly, and he hurriedly signaled Su Tong to be cautious. "Brother Yang, I don't know that this girl has a great origin. Behind her is the Taking Dao, the first sect of Dakian. It is said that she went down the mountain to experience the ordinary mind, which is different from ordinary people. I heard from my father that this girl's cultivation is, although he doesn't have the power to cut down the path, he still has the ability to reach the heavens. Su Tong's heart moved, and he suddenly became curious. He pulled Su Fan and asked, "Your father is second in the world, can taking Dao be more powerful than your father?" This. Su Fan looked around, glanced at his father Su Lai, and found that Su Lai was completely focused on the building at the moment, so he lowered his voice and said, "I don't know, but my dad is very afraid of taking Dao. It seems that there is a true God behind us taking Dao." When Su Tong heard this, he immediately understood. The script in his hand did mention that Su Lai was under the control of gods, but there was no clear explanation. This can only be said that the starting point of the players in the previous round was too low, so that their status was not even enough to participate in this kind of banquet. Naturally, they were unable to contact the successor of taking Dao in front of them. Their level of exploration was low, resulting in many details that were not included in the script. Show. This is why Su Tong did not intend to use their route as a reference from the beginning. Two maids in green shirts came out of the boat. Su Tong took a look and found that these two maids were both masters at the pinnacle of Taoism. He was even more curious about this Yaoqing girl. And Su Lai was one step ahead of everyone else, striding forward, slightly arching his hands towards the two maids, and then looking directly at the boat. "Miss Yaoqing's music is moving. I have a music score in my hand, which is from the pre-Qin period. It's an ancient song, and I hope the girl will accept it even if it expresses my feelings a little bit." Su Lai took out the score from his arms and presented it to the maid. The second best person in the world, De Qianquazu, was so humble when facing the girl who painted the boat. Everyone understood what Su Lai was planning. Su Tong couldn't help but said to Su Fan, "Is your father going to find a stepmother for you?" Su Fan twitched the corner of his mouth and snorted coldly, his eyes full of contempt. In fact, this matter is not difficult to understand. Although Lu Ji is pregnant, no one dares to say whether it is a boy or a girl. What Su Lai has to do is not just to have one son, but to have a lot of children and find a suitable heir to inherit the Su family's property. But with the body of an earthly immortal, it is not easy to give birth to a child, but if the woman has advanced cultivation, this matter will become easier. After the two maids sent the music score into the building, a moment later a woman's voice of thanks came from the building. "Thank you, Su Qiazu. This music score is very rare. I just heard that this music score is so powerful in the world today. Marquis Xinwu is also here, I wonder if you can introduce him to me." As soon as these words came out, everyone turned around and focused their attention on Su Tong. Su Lai looked at Su Tong sideways, and his face became unhappy for a moment. But Su Tong picked up the wine glass and drank it all in one gulp. He tilted his head and whispered to Su Fan, "It seems that this Yaoqing girl can't be your stepmother." The other party was clearly trying to use him as a shield. Unfortunately, Su Tong had never been a person who liked to suffer losses. After saying that, he stood up and walked to the boat. "Today I heard the girl's name for the first time. She is indeed an extraordinary person. For this reason, I have also prepared a poem for the girl." The Westlake Poetry Society is itself a place for poetry and poetry. When everyone heard that Marquis Xinwu wanted to present poems, they immediately became interested. Now everyone in the world knows that this Yang Hong is a scholar from the Suancan country, and he is quite talented. Just take the opportunity to see what kind of poetry this Xinwu Hao can write. Even the woman sitting upright in the boat couldn't help showing a strange expression, and her eyes under the veil were quite proud. Su Tong glanced at the people present with his peripheral vision, and said with a smile, "The smoke is in the cold water, the moon is in the sand, and I stay at the West Lake near the restaurant at night." Good. Everyone's eyes lit up as soon as these two lines of poetry came out, and they knew that this poem was amazingly talented. So they all pricked up their ears and waited for the next step. Unexpectedly, at this moment, the smile on Su Tong's face gradually faded, and his voice suddenly turned colder. He squinted his eyes and read out the second half of the poem. The merchant girl does not know the hatred of the country's subjugation, but she still sings the flowers in the backyard across the river. Note, due to recent environmental problems, this chapter says that it cannot be viewed temporarily, and it is not deleted. I can see it in the background, but it is temporarily blocked. It will be fine after a while. This is normal. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 980. The sound of poetry rippled on the water of West Lake, and everyone could hear it clearly. Su Tong didn't know whether there was Dumu in this era. But at this time, except for this poem, Su Tong had no more suitable poem to express his inner anger as Yang Hong. The civil and military officials of the court were singing and dancing, and they seemed to only have 4 words in their eyes: the great victory at Langshan. Little did they know that the number of Tianqian killed in the battle at Langshan was not much lower than that of the northern barbarians. Of the 30,000 advance troops, less than 3,000 survived in the end. This is still because of myself. The bloody battle at Langshan was like a meat grinder. 40,000 Tiangan soldiers lay under Langshan and never woke up. The wounded and disabled were even more incalculable. This battle was a great victory, but it could not be summed up in the words victory at Langshan. Everyone was dumbfounded for a moment. The expressions of those ministers were suddenly bright and dark. Was this a lack of face? This is rubbing all their faces on the ground. The talent of this poem is astonishing. Who among the people present can't think of the spring and autumn period in their hearts? Looking at this poem from a professional perspective, the more they read, the more amazing the talent becomes. The word cage in the first sentence is very eye-catching. Smoke, water, moon, and sand are harmoniously blended together by the 2 characters cage, creating an extremely elegant night scene by the water. The second sentence may seem ordinary, but it is worth pondering. The first 4 words point out the time and place for the scenery in the previous sentence, and the last 3 words open the way for the following, leading to the next 2 lines of poetry. It's just that the last 2 lines of poetry are really harsh. He was scolding the Yeoking girl in front of him, but in fact, he was mocking everyone present. Everyone's face was burning, as if someone had slapped them out of thin air. If it were anyone else, this time would definitely arouse the anger of the people and join forces to attack. But the young marquis in front of him has a very heroic spirit and a sharp cold light in his eyes. Regardless of his extreme strength, even the bloody human head in Qian Feng's arms makes no one dare to pay any attention to him. No. Seeing that everyone's faces were getting uglier, Su Tong grinned and his mood instantly improved. He likes to see others feel uncomfortable. The more uncomfortable they are, the happier he is. I can't kill you, but I can still disgust you for a while. Looking at Su La's face again, he saw that his Chinese character face was now as pale as steel, his eyes were glaring at him angrily, and he snorted coldly, "What a poem!" The voice sounded slightly cold to outsiders, but in front of Su Tong it was a different story. Under Su La's cold snort, huge thoughts were mixed in, like a torrent of river water rushing towards him. The huge mental power is the result of Su La's decades of hard training to become the earthly immortal queen. His mental power is like the sea, and he can follow his words. Just a cold snort is enough to kill the masters who have entered the Taoist realm, even the enlightened heavenly beings. I'm afraid I'm going to suffer a big loss too. Su Tong raised his eyebrows slightly. He didn't expect Su La's thoughts to be so powerful, but he was not afraid of him at all. He silently recited the Nirvana Sutra to make his thoughts clear. Facing the raging thought power in front of him, Su Tong's consciousness was not at all not affected. Seeing Su Tong's indifferent look, Su Lei couldn't help but have a strange look in his eyes. "Sorry, I drank too much and am not feeling well. Goodbye. Su Tong smiled and already had a rough understanding of Su La's strength. He stopped staying immediately, and after being polite, he took advantage of the fact that everyone was still here. After coming back to his senses, he turned around and walked to Jianfeng. He glanced at him with a smile that made Jianfeng's whole body tremble. Then he picked up the head and turned away. Uncles, Lord Shenwu has drunk too much. I will see him off. When Su Fan saw that Yang Hong was leaving, of course he didn't dare to stay here any longer, so he ran away immediately. As soon as the two people left, the scene exploded. Several officials pointed in the direction Su Tong left and cursed. A clear cold voice came from the boat, Mr. Kuazu, my little girl is not feeling well today. For the time being, farewell. After speaking, the two maids turned around and walked into the cabin, signaling the boatmen to leave. As for the 18 fairies in the Si Jiaofang, they also played their violins and left one after another, not daring to stay any longer. This poem was so powerful that even though Yang Hongren left, the sound lingered in my ears and lingered for a long time. Whoever could continue to stay would be really shameless. If people hang this poem on their heads in the future, even Fairy 18 will probably have a bad reputation. Even the girls in Sijiofang couldn't stand such irony, let alone the court officials. Some of them immediately stepped forward and resigned to Su Lai. The ministers had all run away. How dare those strangers stay longer? They still said goodbye to Su Lai with a smile on their faces, but when they turned around, they wished they had 2 extra legs. In an instant, no one had time to say a word in the originally lively Westlake poetry recital. Before Su Lai could talk about martial arts, he was stunned by Su Tong's poem. Everyone ran away dejectedly with their heads down as if they had been slapped. The most annoying person among them was naturally Su Lai himself. It was said that when Su Lai left Westlake and returned home, he conveniently sent all the guards who were responsible for following Lu Yanfang's orders to death row for dereliction of duty. Su Tong's poem also spread throughout the streets overnight. Many aspiring people heard this poem and called Shenwu how powerful. When he learned that Su Tong had killed Lu Yanfang, he even shouted with joy. Others shook their heads and sighed, feeling that Marquis Shenwu's actions tonight, although he was very angry on behalf of the soldiers who went on the expedition, also offended the civil and military officials of the entire dynasty, especially Su Kuazu, who was offended to death. Damn it, I'm afraid that although this court is big, it can no longer accommodate him. This concern is not unfounded. After all, the Su family covers the sky with only one hand. Even though Shenwu Hao is also the best in the world, Su Laming has never turned against him, but it is not a problem to suppress him severely in the court. Su Tong didn't know what Su Lai was thinking, but when he let out this breath of bad breath, he felt that his whole body was fully aware of his thoughts and he was indescribably happy. Brother Yang, it's getting late. Is there a place to stay in Linen? Su Fan asked Su Tong from the side. As soon as Su Tong shook his head, Su Fan immediately said, it just so happens that I have a villa in Linen. You can just follow me and live there temporarily. Su Tong is not polite. The two of them are now grasshoppers on the same rope. No matter whether the little guy in Lu Ji's belly is born a boy or a girl, Su Fan must rely on Su Tong's amulet. If he still has it at this time, to be polite, it turns out to be foreign. So the two of them went straight to the other courtyard. Su Fan asked the guards following him to go home early and ordered the kitchen to prepare food and wine. On the road, Su Tong was lying on the carriage. Su Fan's carriage was very big, much larger than ordinary carriages. It was paved with thick soft mats inside, and there was a hot stove on the side. Even the wheels were made of thick wrapped in thick animal skin, it is extremely comfortable to sit on. Su Tong changed to a more comfortable position and asked, Brother Su, how much do you know about Shangqing Dao? Su Fan thought for a moment, held the heater in his arms, covered his cold hands and said, not much. This Shangqing Dao is particularly mysterious. Even I don't know who the leader is, but there is one thing that is very interesting. Su Fan talked about the past. It was 6 years ago. Su Lai went out with a sword. It took 2 months before he came back. When he came back, he was scarred. There was a wound on his shoulder, and the bone was visible. This matter was kept as a secret, and few people in the Su family knew about it. But only Su Fan knew that Su Lai went to Xianrending where Shangqing Road was located. Hearing what Su Fan said, Su Tong suddenly became alert. Su Lai, as the second best person in the world and blessed by national luck, was actually injured. This shows that this Shangqing Dao is indeed extraordinary. Well, I need to find an opportunity to explore the depths of Shangqing Road. While Su Tong was thinking about it, the carriage stopped in front of a manor. There are 2 lion-shaped gate piers on both sides of the Vermilion Gate. The lions are majestic and unstoppable. The stone drum below the gate pier is engraved with the image of a unicorn, which is even more vivid, as if it is about to jump down from it at any time. Common people also have this kind of gate, but their grades vary greatly. For example, the lion and unicorn in front of you represent the exclusive possession of the royal family, and even a first-rank official cannot override it. In other words, the Su family is only qualified to enjoy it if they are relatives of the emperor. When you walk into the gate, you will see a dragon screen wall in front of you. 3 dragons are circling, with a rainbow-like momentum. They are so delicate that even the scales on it imply the number of 3 talents and 6 unions. As soon as Su Tong entered the door, he could feel an invisible aura coming, but when it came into contact with him, it disappeared without a trace. This screen wall is a security feature of the house, which can prevent sneaky and evil things from following the owner into the door. The screen wall in front of him was even more impressive. The 3 dragons were full of aura, and they even had a faint feeling that they were about to materialize. When Su Tong took a closer look, he found that these 3 dragons had no eye-catching features. This couldn't help but remind him of Wu Daizai's rising dragon picture. I'm afraid if I click on the dragon's eyes, these 3 dragons will break through the wall and rise up. Su Tong thought about it secretly and couldn't help but be surprised. This place is said to be a villa belonging to Su Fan, but the standards are ridiculously high. Even though Su Tong, a land god, followed Su Fan all the way in, he could not help but feel like Grandma Lu entering the Grand View Garden. Even the teacups for drinking water are expensive, so expensive that it is staggering. Although Su Fan had no cultivation, his life was more like that of an immortal. Fortunately, Su Tong didn't feel anything about these foreign objects. Compared with this house, Su Fan had people prepare the meals early, which made Su Tong's mouth water. I thought that in this era without the blessing of technology and hard work, the taste of food would generally be bland. But when the table of delicious food was served, Su Tong realized that he was superficial. A plate of glazed dragon jelly, at first glance, looks like a very ordinary plate of isinglass inside. At most, it is carved into a shape. But when you actually eat it, even Su Tong almost bit his tongue. It tastes delicious, has an endless aftertaste, and has a strong sauce aroma, which is simply amazing. When Su Tong asked, he found out that the tofu was not made from beans, but made from fish bones. What? Fish bones? That's right, sturgeon bones that are more than 20 years old are taken and fed slowly in 12-bone soup over low heat. In the end, the bones are like jelly and crystal clear. The taste is amazing when you put it in your mouth. It feels like a swimming dragon is jumping around in your mouth when you swallow it. Just this one dish costs 30 taels of silver. Among them, 10 taels were used to buy fish, and the remaining 20 taels were used to make soup. You know, during this great victory at Langshan, all the soldiers received at most only 10 taels of silver for their military merit, which in the end was not enough to eat this dish. In addition to this glazed dragon jelly, there are other dishes such as goose web duck, sour bamboo shoots and chicken skin soup, and ham stewed elbow. These dishes may seem ordinary, but every dish is a rich dish. Those who are either rich or noble cannot afford to eat. Finally, there is a dessert. I don't know what it is called. It is square and white and tender as snow. It tastes crispy on the outside and soft and tender on the inside. It has the fragrance of jujubes, but the taste is not like jujubes. On the contrary, it is delicate. It has to make people feel like they are eating ice cream. When Su Tong asked, he found out that it was originally made from jujube paste and yam. Although the thing was simple, the workmanship was exquisite and unusual. Su Tong enjoyed the meal, and then he saw Su Fan smiling and saying, "Brother Yang, I have already finished the rice cakes you gave me last time." Su Tong suddenly realized when he heard this. No wonder Su Fan was waiting here without moving his chopsticks. In fact, since Su Fan returned to Linen, he had no appetite. It was really uncomfortable, so he followed Su Tong's method and soaked some rice cakes in warm water and ate them. Although the taste is average, after eating it for a while, my body actually improved. It was all eaten within a few days. No wonder Su Fan was obsessed with it. Hee, you should have told me earlier. Su Tong took out a grain of dragon rice. Although there was only one grain, this dragon rice was larger than a millstone. Under the moonlight, it exuded a luster like Hessian jade. If he hadn't known that this thing could be eaten, he would have eaten it. From an outsider's perspective, they may think it is a complete piece of jade. Su Fan quickly called his servants and brought the things into the kitchen, intending to make himself a bowl of porridge first. "Brother Yang, are you planning to meet the saint tomorrow?" Su Fan asked while Su Tong had eaten and drank enough. "The coach hasn't arrived yet, so I, the deputy general, cannot meet him in advance." Su Tong counted the time and estimated that it would take at least 3 days for Wu Ji and his party to arrive at Linen Mansion, so he did not plan to go directly to the palace to meet the saint yet. Su Fan nodded and said that Su Tong could rest assured that if someone took advantage of this to cause trouble at the meeting tomorrow, he could come forward to help. At least the killing of Lu Yanfang was not a big deal. It would only be a few words of no pain or irritation. Just scolding. The emperor had been dissatisfied with the Su family for a long time. It was rare that Su Tong slapped Su Lai in the face as soon as he arrived. It was too late for the emperor to be happy. In fact, what the emperor was most worried about now was that Su Tong was on Su Lai's side. A land god, I'm afraid he could make the emperor cry to death. Su Tong wanted exactly this effect. On the surface, killing Lu Yanfang was to give bad breath to the soldiers of the three armies. In fact, the deeper purpose was to show the emperor that he and Su Lai were at odds with each other. So from the beginning, Su Tong was not worried about any bad consequences that his actions tonight might bring. "Oh, by the way, didn't you mention before that you wanted to go for a walk in the Tianlao of Linen Mansion? This is the token. You can go in at any time with this token." Su Fan took off a token from his waist and handed it to Su Tong. Su Tong picked it up and saw that it was Su Lai's token. He couldn't help but glance at Su Fan. "Isn't this inappropriate?" "It's appropriate." "What's inappropriate?" "This old guy's token works better than the emperor's edict." Su Tong's original intention was that he just had a falling out with his father, and holding his father's token here always felt like a bit of a bully. But seeing Su Fan's disapproving look, Su Tong swallowed these words in his stomach. After all, his father is kind and his son is filial, so it's hard for him to say it to an outsider. As the night got darker, Su Tong moved into the room under Su Fan's arrangement. As soon as he entered the room, there were two little girls aged 18, wearing almost transparent gauze, kneeling and watching over the bed. When Su Tong took a look, he thought it was arranged by Su Fan, but the housekeeper first explained that it was a maid used to warm her feet. If Su Tong needs it, there are also beautiful concubines in the house, and these two maids can also help. Good guy. This kind of treatment made Su Tong think that he was walking into a rich family. After signaling to the housekeeper to take the two girls away as he did not need them, he repeatedly declined the housekeeper's enthusiastic recommendation and closed the door. Su Tong calmed down and thought about what Su Fan mentioned about Su's last trip to Xianren Dinky 6 years ago. The matter of injury. Su's last strength is very strong. His own thoughts have reached the point where he can transform into images and kill people with a single thought. If he hadn't been too obsessed with future generations and his thoughts were not pure enough, I'm afraid his strength could be even higher. Lu, such a character can actually be injured. It seems that the gods hidden in the script this time are probably hidden in the Shangqing Dao. Su Tong figured out his target, hid it behind the immortal's head, sat on the bed, and quickly fell into meditation. The collision of thoughts with Su Lai today made him realize how powerful Su Lai was, but he also further realized the magical effect of the Nirvana Sutra, and planned to take advantage of this time to practice the Nirvana Sutra to the second level as much as possible. Unexpectedly, Su Tong had just entered trance when he felt his brows jump sharply. A sense of oppression came over him, causing him to suddenly open his eyelids from trance. A golden light bloomed from his eyes, and his spiritual eyes opened. He could see through the reality with one glance, locking in on the body of a shadow outside the wall. Hey, where did this little thief come from? Su Tong sneered, stood up and rushed out of the room, leaping into the air. The other party also noticed Su Tong's movement, but did not show any panic at all. He even paused for a moment deliberately, as if waiting for Su Tong to catch up, then turned around and walked lightly towards the outside of the city. Seeing that the other party was trying to lure him out of the city, Su Tong thought for a while and called Da Ya, calling Da Ya out and asking her to guard the other courtyard for him in case he wanted to move the mountain. Plan, and then set off to catch up with the figure. I saw Su Tong's figure like a kunpeng. He stepped a little and was thousands of meters away in an instant. But what he didn't expect was that the speed of the black shadow was not weaker than his own. It even seemed to be deliberately fishing for him. If he accelerated, the other party would also accelerate. If he slowed down, the other party would also slow down. Come down. What a fast movement. Su Tong looked around and saw that the other party's feet seemed to be stepping on lotus flowers. The steps were very broken, but surprisingly fast. He couldn't help but think of the almost lost footwork called ghost steps in the female role of Peking opera. The two are somewhat similar, but the steps taken by the person in front of them are even weirder. In one step, the figure floats hundreds of meters forward. Even if he was in the realm of earthly immortal, he could never compare to shrinking the earth into an inch. Looking at the figure of the other party again, even though he had the blessing of divine vision, he could not tell the depth of the other party's cultivation. However, Su Tong could confirm based on her body shape that she must be a woman. There are not many women with such strength. Su Tong's mind was like lightning, and he suddenly thought of the Yaoqing girl who had not shown up in the boat tonight, and immediately smiled secretly. I haven't gone to find you yet, he just came to the door by himself. As soon as he thought of this, Su Tong jumped up and his speed suddenly increased several times. When the other party saw Su Tong coming so fast, he immediately stepped into the lotus and rushed out of the city in an instant. He didn't stop until he reached the top of a deserted mountain. Only when Su Tong came after him did he suddenly turn around and say coldly, Marquis Xinwu is indeed a hero in the world, but today the Marquis almost ruined my reputation. The little girl also wants to learn from the Marquis' swordsmanship. It's really you. When Su Tong heard this, he determined the identity of the visitor. It was the girl Yaoqing, the fairy of the Shangqing Dao, whom Su Lai had flattered. Su Fan said that this woman's cultivation level is not high, but she is strong enough to fight an earth immortal. I just want to test her strength first. An idea came to Su Tong's mind, and he immediately raised his hand and struck it with a thunder talisman. He didn't even show any politeness, and struck hard with one strike. Su Tong's quick movements made Yao Qing startled at first, but then she became a little angry. He went down the mountain to experience the world of mortals in preparation for cutting the path. Although he was in the world of mortals, he did not occupy any part of it. Today, Yang Hong's poem was like a basin of sewage poured on him. Just imagine that when she goes out in the future, if someone recognizes her, they will probably associate herself with this poem. Wouldn't she be that shameless prostitute? This humiliation made Yao Qing more and more angry after she left. She came in a hurry to talk to Yang Hong, but she didn't expect that the other party would be more decisive than her. It was as if he had been preparing to kill her early in the morning. This was really it made her feel shocked and angry. Facing the thunder from the sky, he stepped lightly with the solace of his feet, and in the blink of an eye, he moved forward and rushed towards Su Tong. The courage of this woman to defy the immortals in the realm of gods and humans is really extraordinary. She raised her palm and squeezed the seal. Suddenly, the magnificent starry sky appeared in the palm of her hand, and the stars in the sky began to rotate violently in her palm. When Su Tong saw this, he simply squeezed his fingerprints and slapped a diamond seal on the woman's palm. Unexpectedly, the moment these palms touched each other, Su Tong suddenly realized that something was wrong. He intuitively felt that the stars in the woman's hands had a huge suction force that was about to swallow up his own power. "I want to swallow me, but I'm afraid you'll break those big teeth." Sensing something bad, Su Tong roared angrily, pure yang qi surged out of his body, and a dazzling sword light burst out. The sword light penetrated the galaxy and pierced the woman's face. The woman dodged sideways, but the black gauze covering her face was swept away by the sword energy, revealing a beautiful face, with fine white skin, refined under the moonlight, and her facial features were so exquisite that it was breathtaking. But at this time, the woman's face showed a bit of anger. "Since you know who I am, you still dare to kill me." When Su Tong heard this, he curled his lips and revealed a sinister smile. "Who cares who you are? There are evil ways in the world who use strange magic to attack important officials of the imperial court. According to the law of heaven and earth, the demon will be captured, stripped of his clothes, soaked in dung cellars for 3 days, and hung on the city tower to show the public. Die from exposure." Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 981. The first level of officialdom crushes people to death. Su Tong knew that the woman in front of him was the Yao Qing girl who made Su Lai polite, but in his mouth, this was the evil way. He directly used the law, put a big hat on it, and had no scruples at all. Now Yao Qing was inevitably a little confused. This person poured a basin of dirty water on himself, and when he came to him to seek justice, he directly brought out the law. It's like you poured a bucket of excrement on someone's front door, and they came to your house aggressively demanding an explanation. Instead of giving an explanation, you picked up a shotgun and threatened to beat you to death for invading my private property. Why don't you respect any moral principles? Can't you afford it? Do you want to strip yourself, dip yourself in a dung cellar, and hang yourself on a tower? Giggle, giggle. After Yao Qing snorted coldly, she let out a burst of teasing laughter, like a big cat teasing a mouse. Okay, Marquis Shenwu is indeed a young hero, but do you really think you can capture me? Cultivation does not necessarily represent strength. Although he is only in the realm of heaven and man, since he dares to come back to this place, he must have extraordinary means. Su Tong did not respond, but raised the corner of his mouth slightly, and silently summoned the Pure Yang sword from the prop book. The moment the Pure Yang sword was unsheathed, Su Tong's aura suddenly increased sharply. That huge amount of Pure Yang energy actually tore apart the night sky for a moment. At the same time, he patted his head again, and saw the little fat man crawling out from above his head. His hands were like snakes, turning into 2 thunder hammers shining with strong light. A fierce light appeared on his plump little face, staring at Yao Qing's face. He smacked his chest and smacked his lips. "Good guy, we agreed to a duel, but you raised Gatling before I even pulled out my gun." Yao Qing's eyes widened, and his face instantly turned pale. He did not expect that the other party would not play according to common sense. In shock, his eyes suddenly became sharp. He did not dare to hold back at all, and slapped the sachet on his waist with his palm. A gust of dark wind flew out of the sachet, causing dust to fly all over the sky. Within a few breaths, it was swept into the air, forming a huge storm of yellow sand. Suddenly, all the yellow sand and dust condensed into a huge human face with a green face and fangs. It opened its bloody mouth and sharp teeth, and suddenly swooped down and swallowed Su Tong. Huh! Su Tong was not in a hurry to take action, and looked up and down at this giant face. It seemed to be made of gray and yellow sand, but it seemed to be blessed by Taoism. The sand, stone, and dust were also as hard as steel. If you swallow it with your face and chew it, it will definitely grind you into a pulp like a meat grinder. It's just that these tricks are too childish. Su Tong didn't even take action when he saw the little fat man waving his hands and beating the thunder drum behind him. A dull sound of thunder came. Only the sound of thunder was heard without the lightning. The rolling power rolled down, like the wrath of the sky, and suddenly shook the giant in front of him. Letting out a wail of pain, most of his figure suddenly disappeared. "If you only have this level of strength, just wait to be caught by me and thrown into the sky prison." Su Tong's face was expressionless, his eyes were extremely cold, and he was thinking in his heart that he wanted to see through Yao Qing how different this Shangqing Dao was. Boom! Under Su Tong's instruction, the little fat man raised his two hammers high. Thunder and lightning suddenly broke out, and wild pythons and electric snakes tore open the sky. The huge movement even alarmed Linen Mansion. In Sitianjian's Yushan Pavilion, more than a dozen white-robed Confucian scholars, 4 black-robed chief clerks, and 2 green-robed deputies were sitting on the ground. On the small table in front of them were compasses, almanacs, and papers for checking calculations all over the floor. Following the Confucian scholars behind them, they handed over the calculated numbers on their hands layer by layer, and the 4 chief bookkeepers calculated them again, and then recorded the numbers and handed them to the 2 deputy chief clerks. The banging sound of the abacus is getting louder and louder. When they heard the shocking thunder outside, everyone pointed their fingers and looked sideways at the thunder cloud outside the window. "Master Shen, this movement." The right deputy raised his head and looked at Master Shen, the supervisor of Sitianjian. Shen Kuo put down the book in his hand and waved his hand. "We have no control over Jianghu affairs. As long as you don't enter Linen City, it has nothing to do with us. Let's continue to calculate. Time is running out. In 3 months, if we can't calculate on the day when the comet hits the moon, we will just wait to be sent to the sky prison to die." Everyone nodded after hearing this and continued to pick up the arithmetic beads on their fingertips. Only Shen Kuo glanced at the thunder clouds outside the window, and finally frowned, picked up the teacup in his hand and walked to the window. "Thundering and no rain will make people upset." After saying that, he poured the teacup in his hand. Tick tick, tick tick, swoosh. The heavy rain poured down in an instant, but in the wind, rain, and thunder, a woman was walking like a fairy, barefoot. Her steps were erratic, and the night clothes on her body had receded, revealing a gauze red silk skirt. The water sleeves danced like a fairy in the storm. But underneath the seemingly beautiful and moving dance, there is also a murderous intention hidden in front of her. Facing the thunder and lightning in front of her, she saw Yao Qing dancing lightly with her hands, wisps of invisible power entangled around her, and Xiaopeng's lightning struck down one after another. Actually can't get close to Yao Qing. Interesting. Su Tongming's Kimen and divine eyes were both activated, and his eyes were fixed on Yao Qing's body. He saw a mandala flower around her body, and wisps of ethereal divine light bloomed from it, protecting her. Yang Hong, do you really think that I am easy to mess with on the Qingdao road? Even Su Lai would not dare to do this. Yao Qing's face was cold. Su Tong, who was standing with a sword in front of her, had not yet made a move, but it brought great pressure to her. She said harsh words, but she wanted to give up. It was because she had underestimated the heroes of the world. She couldn't bear to think that this man could actually so domineering. Su Lai is Su Lai, I am me. If you don't have any trump cards, then just go ahead and capture him. Su Tong was already impatient. He admitted that the strength of the Yao Qing girl in front of him was indeed extraordinary. At least few among the enlightened gods could be so relaxed under the little fat thunder method. But to say that she could fight an earth immortal, Su Tong felt that Su Fan was exaggerating. Humph. I'm afraid you can't catch it? Yao Qing snorted coldly, formed a seal with her fingers, and shaped the creation with her hands, and wisps of crystal-like gem-like thoughts flew from the center of her eyebrows. This is... Su Tong was shocked and recognized the origin of this thing. It was actually a ray of spiritual thoughts from the gods. He was immediately relieved. No wonder this woman dared to challenge the earthly immortal. It turned out that she had something else to rely on. I saw this soul thought hanging above Yao Qing's head. For a moment, Yao Qing's whole body seemed to have changed. The whole body exuded this radiant light, as if a fairy had descended to earth. Under the gaze of Su Tong Minjiangkamen, he saw a vague figure standing slowly behind Yao Qing. The figure of the god was so huge that there was no end in sight, and the bright stars seemed to surround the figure. Turned into a huge star wheel. Yao Qing's pupils tightened slightly, her lips and teeth moved slightly, and an earth-shattering scolding echoed in Su Tong's ears. How can a junior who has not yet emerged from the world look directly at the gods? The huge mental shock made Su Tong dizzy for a while. Fortunately, the pure yang sword in his hand emitted a burst of blazing sword energy to protect Su Tong's mind. Su Tong hurriedly recited the Nirvana Sutra silently, quickly gathering his almost scattered energy. Gives birth to a strange color. This is a real god, not the last script world. Those low-level abandoned gods can be compared with each other. Even if only a thought is given to Yao Qing, he is still very invincible. Su Tong quickly lowered his head and put away the pure yang sword in his hand. I don't know which god is above. Please give me the name of the Dharma so that the younger generation can pay homage. Ha 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 ha. Seeing Su Tongfu bowing his head softly, a strange smile appeared on Yao Qing's face, which made her originally handsome face look particularly strange for a moment. She let out bursts of hoarse laughter and said with a contemptuous expression, I am Nanda Shang. In the sixth palace of stars, there is the Tianji star, the superior prisoner Bodali Zhenjun. The supreme supervisor Bodali, the Star Lord, mastered the scriptures, supervised the books, and blessed people with longevity. He was indeed a great god in the heaven. After Su Tong learned about his roots, he knew what he was doing, and immediately showed a flattering smile on his face. It turns out to be the real king, Yang Hong, the little immortal in the lower world, paying homage to the real king in the upper world. Su Tong took a deep breath, clasped his fists with his hands, raised them high above his head, maximized his energy, blood, and luck, and bowed heavily in front of him. This worship only caused the feng shui to change color, and Su Tong's luck was churning behind him, making the sound of tigers roaring. Immediately Lord Shangsheng realized something was wrong. His forehead seemed to be stung by a wasp, and there was a burning sting. He immediately understood that it was Su Tong who was causing trouble, and he suddenly became furious. How dare you plot against me? Su Tong didn't care about him and continued to worship. Gods are rare to meet once. It would be a pity not to worship them. Seeing Su Tong come up with such a little trick, Shangsheng Zhenjun was immediately annoyed. His huge divine light bloomed and blocked all the nameless power of Su Tong's Beishenko. A ferocious smile appeared on his face. Stupid, Such a little trick, how can you hurt me? Go back and learn from your wife for a few more years. While he was talking, I saw a very thick sutra book in the hands of the Supreme Lord Shang Sheng. The book looked very thick, and there was a single eye on the cover. The single eye opened and stared at Su Tong. Then the pages of the book turned quickly, and Yang Hong's name was quickly found. As the important god in charge of the scriptures, the true Lord of Shang Sheng can easily change the fate of a person. Seeing that Yang Hong's name has appeared on the paper, Yin who is coming down the mountain, the true Lord of Shang Sheng squinted his eyes and saw, then he let out a weird laugh, ha ha ha, look, I want you to take over as the wounded official. As the saying goes, a wounded official will suffer for half his life, and the other half will be buried in the grave. The wounded official is the god who steals qi, venting his body's vitality and showing signs of being busy. The person with a strong injured official is even worse, and will suffer constant disasters throughout his life. The one with a low status is a person who is enslaved by labor. However, just when the Supreme Lord was about to change his life, he suddenly felt a sense of panic and uncertainty. When he looked up, he saw a huge embroidered shoe piercing the sky and stepping on the head of the Supreme Lord Shang Sheng. Bang, there was a loud sound, even the Supreme Lord was hit dizzy. After all, he was just a wisp of soul thought. How could he withstand this blow when his godhead was not there? He was groggy, and his consciousness became blurred in an instant. I could vaguely hear a woman's chuckle coming from behind. A disciple who can be taught by his master's wife is a true disciple. You know how to use a hammer. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 982. What kind of treasure are master's wife's embroidered shoes? Seeing that Qi Niang's embroidered shoes could be hit with just one hit, Shang Shenzhenjun lost his thoughts. Su Tong did not dare to let her hit him again. Immediately, he pinched his fingers to summon a dragon beaming talisman, which was wrapped around the soul thought of Shang Shenzhenjun. He pulled hard and pulled it out of Yao Qing's body. Then the dragon beaming talisman was twisted back and forth into a ball, and was pulled by Su. The child was thrown directly into the immortal furnace at the entrance of his hall. This true god thought was forcibly taken out of the body. Yao Qing's body was shaky for a moment, and he was about to fall to the ground. However, at this moment, the master's wife came to Yao Qing's side and gently grabbed Yao Qing's shoulder with her slender fingers. The woman could not move and was unconscious. Master's wife is so mighty, even the heavenly god can't stand up to master's wife. I don't think there are many people in the world who can rival master's wife. Su Tong stepped forward and saw his mistress turning her gaze towards him. He quickly flattered her and handed over the promised money. The master's wife took the money, and her expression improved a lot. She looked Su Tong up and down with charming eyes. Don't flatter me. Fortunately, this is just a thought. Do you know what level the true Lord of Shang Sheng is? If it is his thought turn, the godhead descends, and we will all die. Nandu Liuchhanjun is a subordinate of Nandu Changsheng Emperor Yuking Zhenwang. His status is lofty and extraordinary. Even though he was a tycoon, she didn't dare to attack him rashly. Fortunately, this was just a thought on the part of the true Lord Shang Sheng, and she caught him off guard and defeated him with one move. If you entangle too much and are noticed by the true Lord of the Supreme Being, you will be in big trouble. Who said it wasn't? I was also shocked. Grandpa Shi asked me to catch him. I thought it was some kind of evil demon. Who would have thought it was a big shot like Lord Shang Sheng? Su Tong's expression continued to be sad, and he started to complain. This statement may be true or false. When he heard that the Supreme Lord Shang Sheng revealed his identity, he was shocked. What is the concept of a direct subordinate of the immortal emperor? He is on the same level as the palace master of Fengdu Liuxian. Just imagine, if the palace master of Fengdu Liuxian is betrayed by him, I am afraid that Emperor Fengdu of Netherland will come to trouble him, and Du Ziren will not be able to protect him by then. But since the master gave the script to himself, and directly took the old Tao and the master to escape, leaving only the master's wife, didn't it make it clear that she was the one who cheated? If he doesn't drag her into the water, how can he be worthy of his master's good intentions? After all, if a family wants to be finished, it must be in order. Therefore, at this time, Su Tong must have a highly consistent attitude with his wife. Master's wife is the sky, master's wife is the earth, and I am your good baby. After Su Tong complained about how his master acted recklessly and did not consider the life and death of his disciple, he changed his tone and looked pitifully at the master's wife in front of him. Master wife, this guy is probably just a small thought. I'm afraid the real soul clone is still sitting on top of the immortal in the back. Let's fight the smaller one this time. There's no guarantee that the big one won't come to trouble me. You see. The girl snorted coldly, but she couldn't help but feel that she was being plotted. How could she care about Su Tong's pitiful performance? But before she could speak, she saw Su Tong's pitiful eyes staring at her, and she finally sighed, well, as a master's wife, you can't watch your disciple being bullied. As she spoke, Bao Nu sighed in her heart that she was being too conscientious. After saying that, she put the golden money in Su Tong's hand into her sleeve. Su Tong secretly rejoiced after successfully dragging master's wife into the water. Then he pointed at Yao Qing in front of him, who was being controlled by master's wife. This woman is also a member of the Qing dynasty. How should master's wife deal with her? Since Bao Nu didn't kill her right away, it meant that she was still valuable, so Su Tong wanted to find out. This girl is a rare treasure. She was born with a precious body. It would be a pity to kill her. The so-called natural treasure body means that this female body is like a treasure. Even if she does not practice on her own, she can still absorb the spiritual energy of the weather. To separate out a ray of thought of the Supreme Lord and hide it in her body was to take a fancy to the benefits of this girl's natural treasure body and to use her body to nourish the soul. Otherwise, with the blessing of this woman's qualifications, becoming an earth immortal should have been done long ago, so there is no need to experience it in this mortal world. Just in time, let me hide in her body and use her body to practice. I can also help you at critical moments. As she spoke, Ba Nu scratched the tip of her fingernail, and a drop of golden blood squeezed out from the tip of her finger. Su Tong was keenly aware that there seemed to be a ray of powerful soul hidden in the blood. As the princess pointed at Yao Qing's eyebrows, golden blood suddenly disappeared into Yao Qing's forehead, and then she fell to the ground and fell asleep. Master's wife, no one will notice you seizing someone's body like this, right? Su Tong didn't have any good impression of Yao Qing, and even because of Yang Hong, he was very tired of these guys who enjoyed the fireworks of the world and claimed to be extraordinary. But he was worried that Su Lai and others would notice that his wife had taken away Yao Qing. After all, there are many earthly immortals in this world, so I don't know what else is hidden behind the Shangqing Dao. Don't worry, my method of seizing her body didn't kill her life or take away her soul. It was just soaked in the bone marrow and hidden in the body. Unless the Supreme Lord came in person, he would never be aware of my existence, so I can take your place. Let's explore the reality of this pure path. The so-called paste blindness means that the fat at the apex of the heart is paste and there is a gap between the heart and the diaphragm. This is where the power of medicine is most hidden, so there is a saying in Chinese medicine that when the disease is terminal, the medicine is powerless. The master's wife's soul is hidden in it, and even if the earth immortal checks her pulse in person, there is no way she can detect it. Just wait for the critical moment, the soul breaks out of the heart, and the body can be taken over in a moment. The critical moment has the effect of turning the other side. When Su Tong heard this, he silently gave a thumbs up, high, really high. You are smooth talking and don't flatter me. The old one is smooth and the young one is cunning. Your master is an honest man. The lady complained, then turned around and returned to the space between reality and reality. Before leaving, she suddenly remembered something. By the way, Mr. May asked me to tell you something. As early as 3 or 4 days, and as late as 5 or 6 days, the trees you plant will bear fruit. Oh! Su Tong's mind moved. This is good news. He quickly thanked his wife and said he would go back and have a look in a few days. Su Tong just closed the gap between reality and reality, glanced at Yao Qing who was lying unconscious on the ground, smiled coldly, picked up Yao Qing and returned to Linen City, found a hut at random, threw it inside, and then turned around and left. After a while, a scream like a slaughtering pig was heard from the hut, followed by a beautiful figure rushing out of the hut like crazy and diving into the West Lake. Early the next morning. The streets and alleys are extremely lively, but from the taverns and tea houses to the street breakfast, everyone is talking about one thing, which is the West Lake Poetry Festival last night. Heavenly STEM values literature and attaches great importance to literati. Poetry is the highlight that people talk about. In previous years at the West Lake Poetry Fair, people would argue about whose poems were the best. But this year, there was no argument, and there was no need to argue, because only one poem was published in the entire poetry meeting. At the breakfast stall, everyone was eating pancakes and drinking porridge, but everyone was looking at the beggar sitting on the roadside telling stories. This beggar was wearing beggar's clothes, but he was very clean. Most importantly, he was eloquent and vividly told the story of last night's West Lake Poetry Festival. Seeing the people singing and dancing to make peace, Shin Wuhao opened his eyes wide and became furious. He shouted loudly, "Our soldiers fought bloody battles, and you are here in the wine pool and meat forest." He immediately kicked over the wine table and composed a poem on the spot. The merchant girl did not know that the country would perish. Hate, the flowers in the backyard are still singing across the river. Good. After a while, some people clapped their hands and cheered, and threw the pancakes in their hands to the beggar. The rich ones even threw 2 big pieces, which made the beggar thank him repeatedly. That's right, what is being talked about in the streets today is the poem Su Tong wrote last night. People who like this poem really like it, as it seems to express the injustice in their hearts. Although people who don't like it are extremely disgusted, they dare not say anything wrong with this poem. After all, this poem occupies the moral high ground. If it were an ordinary scholar, they might be able to say a few words of ridicule, "You can do it, you can do it," and then they would say, "Do you know how difficult it is to be in the court?" But the person who wrote the poem was Marquis Shinwuo. He was really good at it. Not only did he achieve great fame on the battlefield, but he also won the title of Marquis after fighting at Shinwuo Pass. He slapped the northern barbarian prince, kicked the leader of Yuankai, and became the first person to enter Linen. He chopped off Lu Yanfang's head to comfort the souls of the forward soldiers. If something is not earth-shattering, who would dare to say no? So much so that beggars in the streets and alleys are now praising the goodness of Marquis Shinwuo. People haven't heard such a story to relieve their anger for a long time. Of course, early this morning in the court, it was said that the Holy Emperor didn't even have time to sit on the dragon throne, and one after another the ministers who worshipped the god Wu Ho couldn't wait to jump out. There is nothing more than one thing before and after, that is, Yang Hong kills people in public. Although Lu Yanfang is at fault, the emperor has forgiven him. Yang Hong kills him in public, which is deceiving the emperor and ignoring his superiors. It is a heinous crime. What's interesting is that Su Fan started to defend himself with the group of people he supported. It is said that Lu Yanfang was a guilty person and was able to survive because of His Majesty's favor. Instead of shutting up and thinking about her mistakes, she used it to show off her power and tarnish the holy name. Marquis Shinwuo killed her to protect His Majesty's reputation. The two sides were quarreling so fiercely that they were about to have a fight in front of the emperor. He didn't know how to deal with this matter in the end. The emperor only said that he would make a decision after Wu Ji came back. Su Tong was indifferent to the arguments in the court, as if he didn't care about the matter, but he already knew what happened last night. With the support of Su Fan, the uncle of the country, at best, he would be paying off his merits for his crimes, and would not be punished or rewarded. So he didn't care at all about the outcome. At this moment, he was counting the time. Seeing that the yin hour had arrived, he escaped into the hall and prepared to refine the thoughts of the Supreme Lord into elixirs. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 983. Meet the Headmaster. Su Tongyuan Shen returned to his seat and sat at the head of the hall. Dia led 5 furballs and Sun Li to stand on both sides. Sun Li, who worshipped at the entrance of the hall, transformed into a middle-aged man. Although his face had a cold and unhappy expression, he still bowed his head to worship Su Tong honestly. Gugu. Yun Xing jumped up from the fairy stove and landed on Su Tong's shoulder, rubbing his head left and right on Su Tong's body, feeling particularly intimate. Last time Su Tong took out the divine golden diamond and gave it to Yunkantu, the little guy began to grow rapidly, from the size of a palm to now as big as a cat. With its cute little head, it is simply a girl killer. After waiting for a while, when this little guy grows up, he can let it enter his own Ruyi furnace and help him completely refine the golden talisman in the Ruyi furnace. Headmaster, you. Dia looked Su Tong up and down, and found that Su Tong's soul was now refined, and already had the flavor of a fairy. She couldn't help but secretly said with joy, "Congratulations, Headmaster, congratulations, Headmaster, Headmaster, this is like becoming an immortal." Su Tong rolled his eyes at Dia. "You are the only one with a sweet mouth who can become an immortal? It's still early. I am aware of the changes in my soul, and this is all due to the Nirvana Sutra. After Jean Deo, you will become an earth immortal. In fact, when a person reaches this level, it is already difficult to improve his cultivation. It can basically be understood as a full-level existence in the human world. In theory, there is no difference between a person who has just cut off the Tao and a person who has done it for 100 years. The difference lies in the thoughts of the soul. The stronger the soul is, the more pure and flawless the thoughts will be. Eventually, the soul will understand the nature of heaven and earth, and the soul will return to its original nature and become an immortal. This is just like the real game WoW, both are at full level, but the equipment gap is extremely huge. At this point it takes time to settle, carving it bit by bit like a knife. The Nirvana Sutra can greatly shorten this time, allowing the soul to continuously enter nirvana and cut off its own distracting thoughts, so as to achieve the effect of the soul entering the true state and the thoughts being clear. No wonder those old monks talk about clear rules and precepts, but in fact they have something to do with the Buddhist practice. They are simple and crude, cutting off their greed, anger, ignorance, and hatred of the world. However, Taoists want to use the world of mortals to refine their hearts, cut off injustices, cut off the demons in their hearts, and achieve the goal. All things follow your heart, and your thoughts are clear. After Su Tong thought about the difference between the two, he suddenly remembered something. He took out the G menu and Dan that he had snatched from Yeliki from the props book. Seeing this pill, Sun Li, who was silent at the side, suddenly raised his head, but finally lowered his head. Su Tong took Sun Li's expression change into consideration, sneered, then looked at Dia, and said, "I think you have almost reached a bottleneck, this thing can just help you." Dia obtained the inheritance from the 5 Immortals Hall, but her cultivation speed was too slow and she could hardly keep up with the rhythm. Su Tong thought about it and decided to give her the elixir. Even if it is regarded as a reward for Dia, it is appropriate. Furthermore, the stronger Dia is, the more help she will get. Once she breaks through to the nine-tailed demon fox, even if she loses to the land god, she will still be able to fight evenly. Thank you master. When Ya saw this, she immediately laughed from ear to ear. Her voice was so crisp and numb that it made people feel like their whole body was going numb. This charm was getting stronger and stronger. No wonder those 5 licking dogs surrounded Ya every day. The soles of his feet were spinning. Then Su Tong sat up from the chair, walked to the immortal furnace, and took a closer look. He saw that the wisp of spiritual thoughts of the Supreme Lord in the furnace were wrapped in layers of dragon talismans, but he could still hear this kind regards from the guy to Yang Hong. Happy Chinese New Year to big brother and big sister, you are my father, I am your grandson, and so on. In order to show courtesy, Su Tong tapped his finger between his eyebrows to wake up the sleeping elixir. When the elixir discovered that the raw material for this elixir was actually a ray of the spirit of the god, he immediately became extremely excited. The true lord of Shangsheng, this is a real god, a big boss named in the Taoist Jade Book. The great gods of the 8 classics are not at the same level as the evil gods and abandoned gods who were forgotten by people in the previous script world. To make elixirs in this way, the elixir master wanted to use all he had learned and listed more than 10 kinds of elixir recipes in one breath. What about 3 transformations concentrating pill, Jinyang Dayuan pill, Dragon Tiger rejuvenating pill, Tianchen pill, and so on? These elixirs are all rare elixirs, and their efficacy is abnormal. But the problem is that the auxiliary drugs required for these elixirs are no worse than the soul of the Supreme Lord. Su Tong had a lot of inventory left on his hands, and he took them out one by one. Most of these auxiliary medicines were inherited from the plum blossom lineage, and there were many treasures among them. But compared with the soul of the true king in the previous life, they were really great. Not even close. Fortunately, there is difficulty and there is challenge. For Danjing, this kind of problem is trivial. Easy, use your pure yang energy to make elixirs. Danjing gave Su Tong a prescription. There is only one auxiliary medicine in it, and that is Su Tong's pure yang qi. This immortal alchemy collects magical medicines from all over the world to make elixirs, but they themselves are the great medicines in the world. Su Tong's pure yang energy is a rare treasure medicine in the world. Using his own huge pure yang energy as an auxiliary medicine is better than countless treasure medicines in the world. Although this method is extreme, many gods used this method to refine the supreme golden elixir in ancient times. Even some well-known sects train a large number of disciples, teach each disciple different skills, feed them the treasures of heaven and earth, and then harvest them and refine them into elixirs when they have reached the level of perfection. These things have long ceased. What a secret! Even today, there are still such methods of refining elixirs. For example, Dezhou once made his own disciples into energy elixirs for consumption. When Su Tong heard this, he didn't doubt him. He had a great sun wishful furnace, and he could use as much pure yang energy as he wanted. He immediately summoned the Ruyi furnace and hung it above his head. With the thought, the thunder fluid in the Ruyi furnace began to boil, and a large amount of life breath began to pour into Su Tong's body. In order to prevent accidents, Su Tong also took out the vitality gems he received from Dezhou and put them aside for ready use. After making preparations, Su Tong did not dare to delay any longer. It was Yinchi now, when his luck was at its peak. Whether he could successfully refine the 9th grade divine elixir he wanted depended on this. Immediately, Su Tong placed his hands flat on the immortal furnace, unwrapped the dragon talisman, and activated the Tai's Hang Dan Sutra and the blessing of the sky at the same time. For a moment, a large amount of pure yang energy began to flow toward the immortal furnace like a torrential river. Go in. Thief, if you want to use me to make elixirs, I will destroy your destiny, make your whole family suffer a bad death, and make you a slave and a slave for the rest of your life. The true Lord Shangsheng let out bursts of roars. However, Su Tong had heard these words more than once. Of course he couldn't defeat the Supreme Lord, but this thought fell into his immortal furnace, which was to call Tian Tian Ying Ying and earthly earth. Not working. Don't worry about him being able to get in touch with me. Once you erase his consciousness, he will be a precious magic medicine in your alchemy furnace. I saw Su Tong controlling his pure yang energy with an expressionless face, and began to crazily attack the thoughts of the Supreme Lord, intending to erase all the thoughts in this ray of soul and return to the purest state. With the blessing of the Tais Hang Alchemy Sutra, the fairy furnace began to glow with white light, and the temperature of the furnace body became higher and higher. But strangely, the flame inside the furnace became smaller and smaller, until it seemed to have disappeared. And the thought of the Supreme Being was gradually eliminated bit by bit, until there was no trace at all. At the same time, on Tianmu Mountain, on the top of the Immortal, an angry roar caused the heaven and earth to change, and the sun and the moon became dark. Immediately after, there were two golden lights, one behind the other, trying to rush down the mountain. But before the two golden lights could rush down from the top of the mountain, they were forcibly captured back to the top of the mountain by a terrifying force. Two golden lights, one on the left and one on the right, fell in front of a statue of a god and turned into a pair of golden boys and girls. He looks young, probably only 7 or 8 years old. He has golden lines on his forehead and is surrounded by divine radiance. This scene is almost exactly the same as the state in which Yao Qing brought out the true Lord of Shangsheng. Father, the third child suddenly disappeared. This matter cannot be so unclear. Let me go down to Yao Qing and ask for clarification. The boy clasped his hands into fists and said to the statue in front of him. Sister Yao Qing has always been a low-key person. She usually doesn't cause trouble. With the support of Su Lai, no one dares to disrespect her. This sudden change must be caused by a change in heaven. The girl is soft-spoken and her analysis is clear and logical. After the two of them finished speaking, they saw that the statue in front of them only trembled slightly, and a huge thought appeared in their minds. This matter is strange. I ordered Su Lai to investigate. Don't go down the mountain for the time being. Wait until Su Lai finds out the truth before making a decision. Father, are you worried that the Zhang family is responsible? The boy asked tentatively. The person Zhang Jia was referring to was none other than Longhu Mountain. Zhang Xian, who was born 16 years ago, has the shadow of the Zhang family behind him. Zhang Xian seemed to have come down to fight randomly, but in fact, he was warning them on behalf of the Zhang family that there were also Longhu Mountain believers in this world and they were not allowed to act recklessly. Otherwise, according to the plan, as early as 16 years ago, Tianqian was able to annex Suancan and dominate the world. The three gods of Shangqing Dao were born to suppress the Yuankai Shen cult, and to educate all living beings on behalf of the Tianqian herdsmen. As a result, Zhang Xian's three moves severely damaged Su Lai's luck, causing the country's fortunes to decline and missing the opportunity. Now that the northern barbarians have annexed Suancan, a situation in which the two dragons are fighting has taken shape. But now that the third child has had an accident, it's hard to say that the Zhang family is not up to something. I've already made up my mind about this, so you don't need to worry. After the statue finished speaking, it stopped making any sound. After the golden boy and girl looked at each other, they cupped their hands and finally withdrew. At the same time, on the other side, Su Tong's alchemy was finally coming to an end. A crystal-like elixir was clearly visible in the immortal furnace. The silver pure yang fire enveloped the elixir, exuding a soft radiance. There was a strange spirituality squirming in the elixir. Su Tong seemed to feel that the pill was alive. If he listened carefully, he could hear the bang 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 heartbeat. At this moment, Su Tong suddenly noticed something. As he slowly moved the Tais Hang Danjing, the pure yang fire in the immortal furnace was feeding into the pills bit by bit. A feeling of bliss came over me, as if a hand was placed on my palms, gently pushing my palms, making the pure yang fire gradually become softer. This feeling was very subtle. Under the influence of the light force, Su Tong felt that his control over the power gradually reached another unpredictable level. This is not something he can do. It seems that with the push of his hands, every subtle change in his palm can affect the quality of the elixir. At the same time, Su Tong also felt the pure yang energy in his body, like a flood opening, pouring into the immortal furnace at a speed beyond his expectation. Ding! Your special skill God's Blessing and the passive ability Hand of God are activated, and half of your own script points will be deducted. Su Tong's pupils tightened, and he called out his prop book and took a look. Sure enough, half of his script points evaporated in an instant, and a total of 40,000 script points disappeared. If this were the case in the past, this time I would have made myself so distressed that I would burst into tears. But now, Su Tong is looking forward to the effects brought by the Hand of God. You must know that the probability of triggering the passive skill Hand of God is less than 10%. This is the first time that I have triggered this passive skill while refining alchemy. Soon, a layer of bright light was flowing in Su Tong's palm, like a faint mist lingering. It looked misty, like the hands of an immortal. After gently stroking it, a hole opened in the pill, and all the pure yang energy around him was sucked in. Not good. Su Tong's face changed slightly. He didn't expect that this pill would have such a big appetite, and he didn't expect that this small pill could actually open a mouth by itself, just like a living thing. For a moment, the pure yang energy in the immortal furnace suddenly decreased. If it was too late to replenish it, the temperature of the furnace fire would drop, and all the previous efforts would be wasted. Burn it for me. Thinking of this, Su Tong did not dare to hesitate at all. The Ruyi furnace above his head injected a large amount of life force into Su Tong's body. After the transformation of Su Tong's physical body, it formed a continuous flow of pure yang energy. Entered the fairy furnace. Not long after, I saw that the elixir in the furnace seemed to be full. The originally cracked incision gradually healed, and golden texture appeared on the flawless body of the elixir. The elixir reaches the 9th level and is born with Taoist patterns. Su Tong's heart beat faster. Looking at the pill floating quietly in the fairy furnace, Su Tong couldn't help but hold his breath and reached out to take out the pill from the fairy furnace. The elixir is huge, shaped like a dove egg, and is crystal clear, as if it were carved from crystal. The brilliance flickers and flows with a misty brilliance, making Su Tong's palms shine brightly. The strangest thing is that when he holds it in his hand, it is actually there is a feeling of blood connection with myself. It's done. Su Tong swallowed and spit. This was a treasure pill refined with the real righteous soul. It was only as precious as the great sun-casting pill refined during the journey to the underworld. Su Tong hurriedly put the elixir into the prop book. When he saw the entry for the elixir, he felt his whole heart tremble. This time, the master let him enter the script world in order to deal with the gods behind it. As for which god it was, the master did not say directly. He didn't expect that he would be the Shangsheng Star Lord, one of the 6 Star Lords of the South Do. This risk is very high. After all, he is the real righteous god. If he does this, he will definitely break up with the other party. The Shangshensing Jun masters the scriptures and can change the number of blessings and lifespan in the world. Even the master's wife was very afraid. His figure will appear in any script world. It is conceivable that if this guy is to hold a grudge, he will not be able to rest in peace in the future. But now that he saw the entry for this elixir, Su Tong instantly felt that the risk was worth it. Pure Yang Distracting Pill, rare. After use, the soul can gain divinity and thoughts can be continuously divided. Rumor has it that it is made from a ray of thought from the gods, and those who eat it can transform the soul into thoughts of pure yang. Thoughts of pure yang. Pure Yang skill add 1. Pure Yang prop card skill effect add 1. When activating Pure Yang skills with Pure Yang thoughts, the power is increased by 30%. Skill acquired, Pure Yang Tong Hui. Consuming one Pure Yang thought can triple the power of Pure Yang skills, and so on. The more you consume, the higher the power increase. This skill seems a bit incomprehensible to ordinary people, but in Su Tong's eyes, it is a magical skill. The most important step in cultivating immortality and becoming a Taoist is to keep your thoughts flawless and in harmony with the Tao. Normal people spend their entire lives polishing their soul, and having an external clone is already an incredible magical skill. If the soul is separated, there will be more and more distracting thoughts, and there may even be schizophrenia, and it is not necessarily the case of inner demons. But after becoming an immortal and becoming a god, your thoughts can be divided into thousands. Therefore, in mythology, it is often said that a certain deity has thousands of incarnations. In fact, it was not their incarnation, but a ray of thought that they had separated, just like this true king in the previous life. The same was true for the thought that my master's wife was hiding in Yaocheng. As for the ray of thought that Xiao Lishan hid in Yeliki, Su Tong didn't know how he did it, but this ray of thought took away half of Xiao Lishan's national destiny. It can be seen that it is definitely not a magical method, and it is more likely to be some kind of secret method. Now all he needs to do is take this pill. Even though he has not yet become an immortal, he still has the skills that only immortals have. It's a huge improvement for myself. Thinking of this, Su Tong felt a little entangled in his heart, and muttered, if I had known that such a pill could be refined, I shouldn't have taken down the dream Rubik's Cube just for the benefit of Lo Jinfang. But when I thought about it again, I felt that my idea was too risky, so what if I really took it apart and took it with me? With the more than 40,000 script points in my hand, there is no way to strengthen the elixir to the point of quality transformation. After much hesitation, Su Tong decided to find a suitable time to digest the pill. After all, his opponent this time is not Su Lai or Xiao Lishan, but the god hiding behind him. When the chess pieces on the chessboard start to try to jump out of the chessboard, I believe that as long as the chess players notice it, they will definitely be thrown into a desperate situation. I believe that what I am doing at this moment may have aroused the vigilance of the Shangqing Dao. Therefore, it is the best way to improve your strength as soon as possible. At this time, Su Tong noticed a knock on the door. Su Tong thought for a moment and asked Dia to use Ji Men Yuan Dan to break through the shackles as soon as possible during this period. Then Yuan Shen returned to the physical body, opened his eyes, and sorted out after putting on his clothes. He walked to the door, opened the door and took a look. It was Su Fan. This guy came back from the court and came to Su Tong excitedly without even taking off his official clothes. As soon as he entered the door, he sat down, picked up the teapot on the table and poured himself a glass of water. After drinking it, he vividly talked about how he made his father half dead in the court today. Su Tong listened with great interest, and couldn't help but wonder in his heart how much evil Su Lai had done in his previous life to be able to give birth to such a cheating son. After Su Fan finished speaking, his expression suddenly straightened and he said in a serious voice, "Brother Yang, in 4 months, that bitch Lu Ji will give birth." Hearing this, Su Tong quickly stretched out his hand to stop. "If you want me to assassinate Lu Ji, stop this matter right now. I, Yang Hong, will not attack pregnant women and babies." "No, no, no. I didn't mean that." Su Fan quickly shook his head and explained, "Brother Yang is such an upright person, I dare not let you do such a thing. Besides, although I am at odds with Lu Ji, I will not attack her." At the end of the sentence, Su Fan's eyes wandered unnaturally. When Su Tong saw this, he knew it, but he didn't try to expose his little thoughts. His expression softened and he motioned for Su Fan to continue. Su Fan continued, "What I mean is that if Lu Ji gives birth to a baby boy, my father will definitely not let me go, so, I plan to sneak out as soon as possible." "Sneak out?" Su Tong blinked. "Yes, let's take the 36th stratagem. The northern barbarians were defeated this time. The court was divided into two factions. One is the main war faction, and the other is the peace faction. Unfortunately, my father is on the main side. And this side. When he said this, Su Fan narrowed his eyelids. So in the spring of next year, the imperial court will definitely send envoys to the northern barbarians. By then, this errand will definitely fall on my head, so, I want to ask you to help me. Go on an envoy to the northern barbarians with me. This incident really surprised Su Tong, but on second thought, there were two gods in the script this time, and the other must be in the Yuankai god section. Maybe it would be a good opportunity to find out. Seeing Su Tong not speaking, Su Fan thought Su Tong was hesitating, and immediately gritted his teeth. If Brother Yang is willing to help me, I can tell Brother Yang a big secret. What? Su Tong looked sideways at Su Fan. He didn't think that the good brother in front of him, who was passionate about his righteousness, was the kind of person who was willing to share secrets. Su Fan didn't say anything, he just stood up and walked outside the door. After making sure there was no one around, he closed the door, lowered his voice in Su Tong's ear, and whispered 8 words, 2 dragons fighting, a fairy chess game. Note, sorry, Luoyang is silent. I thought I had all the food, drinks, and cigarettes ready, so I didn't have to worry about being locked down at home, but I never expected that I forgot to buy 2. The AA battery was so bad that the keyboard ran out of power. I searched all the remote controls in the house and couldn't find the AA battery. I was so depressed that I could only code on my phone. It was so hard to read and the update was late. I'm a bit off. I'm really sorry. I'll probably be very late tomorrow. After all, typing on a mobile phone takes too much time on my eyes. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 984. Not far outside Linen Mansion, about 3 miles east, there is an isolated castle standing on the plain. This is a rare piece of flat land, but there is not even a rice field around it. It is desolate and full of dry forests. Even in broad daylight, it feels horrifying. The further you go inside, the colder it becomes. It is said that some people passing by at night even saw the ghost turned into fireflies, which was extremely scary. Everyone in the nearby villages knows that this place is the Tianlao of Linen Prefecture. No matter whether he is a high-ranking official or a vicious robber, as long as he is sent to the prison, he will never come out again in this life. As time passed, there were piles of corpses and bones near Tianlao. Although there were no graves, the resentment had left no grass growing around them. On every 1st and 15th day of the lunar month, the wind blows heavily here, and no one dares to approach easily even in the daytime. It is said that every year during the Ghost Festival, Lord Kuazu, Su Lai, would come to live here in person for a night, using his earthly immortal aura to suppress the resentment in the heavenly prison. Therefore, many people passing by this place will subconsciously take a detour to avoid it. Those dignitaries are even more reluctant to pass by this road for fear of being contaminated with bad luck. Kaka kaka. At this time, the sound of a horse-drawn carriage came from far away, and it entered the path in front of it and headed towards the Tianlao. What's strange is that this is not a prison carriage for escorting prisoners, but a gorgeous carriage. The carriage is larger than ordinary carriages. The wide wheels are wrapped in layers of animal skins and neatly decorated with rivets. Not only does it serve as a reinforcement, but it also gives people a sense of wealth and dignity. Master Marquis, if you go further ahead, you will reach the Tianlao. The road will not be too good, so please sit tight. The coachman on the shaft is wearing an eye patch and is a one-eyed man. This person's name is Mao Bo, and he is Su Fan's confidant. He is about 50 years old, but he has the strength to reach the peak of Taoism. This time it was not that he was sent to lead Su Tong on purpose, but that there was too much resentment around Tianlao. If someone who was not strong enough broke in rashly, he would be seriously ill after returning, and he might even lose his life. Only masters like Mao Bo who have entered the Taoist realm can enter and exit freely. In the carriage, Su Tong responded, but he was thinking about another thing. He didn't expect that Su Lai and Xiao Lishan were both rivals and close friends. According to Su Fan, on the surface, the two are fighting to the death, and the two dragons are not allowed to meet each other, and they will die if they meet, but in fact, the two have started to communicate closely in private a long time ago. Su Fan even learned the news in advance about what happened last time at Luyuepi. Of course, Su Fan said this very cryptically, but you could tell that he was trying to lead himself in the direction of Luyuepi when he was running towards that direction. The reason why the two are so close is precisely because their fate is that if the two dragons do not meet each other, whoever does meet will surely die. And behind this, someone deliberately changed his fate. When Su Fan said this, he pointed in the direction of Immortal Summit, and the meaning was self-evident. The two gods are using two people as chess, and the world is a chessboard. The winner will unify the world. One of them must use this to become an immortal. This is the so-called fairy chessboard. Su Fan knew this because he accidentally learned it from his father's letters hidden in a secret room. It's just that both of them are playing Tai Chi now, as if they don't want to be their chess pieces, and are discussing a plan to break the game. I don't know exactly how the two of them operate. But there is one thing. Su Fan discovered a hidden code in his belief in Lao Tzu, which was to attack the moon. Su Fan sent someone to check it himself, and later found 4 words. Comet strikes the moon. The so-called comet hitting the moon is a celestial phenomenon. In Warring States Policy Way CE4, whose Wanzu stabbed Wang Liao like a comet striking the moon. It represents the following offenses. In other words, on this day, the fortunes of the world will suddenly become chaotic, and those in lower positions will have the opportunity to plot against those in higher positions. So Su Fan concluded that this was the day the two of them had been waiting for. As for when this day arrived, Su Fan couldn't find out. In this era, it is taboo to peek into the sky, let alone read the ephemeris records of past generations. This kind of thing is the same as rebellion. Only people from the Sitianjian of past dynasties can check it. Su Tong thought about the information Su Fan said, took out the script in his hand and looked through it, but did not find that the script mentioned the issue of a comet hitting the moon. According to the direction of the development of the script in his hand, Xiao Lishan was defeated by Su Lai in the end, and then turned around to rebel. After they killed Su Lai, they became the containers of gods. He read the script repeatedly and always felt that the story was missing a corner, so that the content in the script flipped in leaps and bounds. And I don't know exactly what this missing corner is. Hey, these people did a poor job developing the script in the last round. Too many details went undiscovered, otherwise I wouldn't have to be so passive. Su Tong sighed. If Su Fan's guess is correct, he will go to the Northern Barbarians in the spring of next year. There are still 2 or 3 months before then, and he can just seize the time to practice the Nirvana Sutra. Improve your own strength, and at the same time supplement and expand the nightmare cavalry under your control. Head. At this time, Chang Wenzhen's voice came from the team channel. Head. Now, we can make a fortune. Immediately afterwards, Chang Liuja sent a visual screenshot to the team channel. Su Tong took a closer look and couldn't help but widen his eyes, and said in shock, "Did you kid rob the treasure house of the Northern Barbarian Palace?" He, these are all for free, they are all good things, but please do me a favor first. I remember that you seem to have a magic talisman that can strengthen weapons. Time goes back to this morning. Boom boom, 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 boom. Have a safe night. On the 5th watch day, with the sound of the clock knocking, the residents in Bamangzongdu city have begun to get up from their beds. As soon as he opened the door, he saw that the ground outside was covered with a thin layer of frost. The north is no better than the south. It's not even December yet, and it's already so cold that people shrink their necks. Ordinary people can only endure the cold and go out wrapped in cotton padded clothes. But in the young master's mansion, it was a different scene. The red-hot heater was brought into the room with the cover closed. The whole room was warm and comfortable. More than a dozen maids lined up and walked forward, slowly walking inside carrying hot water, incense burners, shell powder, bomb, and other dozens of things. Yeliki stood expressionlessly in front of the bed, letting the maids fiddle with them. Only after the series of processes were completed, the little eunuch standing beside him stepped forward and stretched out his fingers to help Yeliki. Arrange the clothes around the collar a little. Your Highness, the prince sent a lot of good things yesterday. Among them are many rare toys and some precious medicines for improving one's cultivation. It shows that the prince has been thinking about you recently. Yeliki snorted coldly and sneered at these precious treasures. After waving the guards and followers to go away, he glanced coldly at the little eunuch beside him. There is no news from Dichu yet. This. The little eunuch looked troubled and whispered, Your Highness, Mr. Dis said that if he wants to reshape his body, he needs natural resources and treasures. He will have difficulty gathering them for a while. He can only wait for the Yuankai temple to be built and invite the Yuankai god to come. Bestow the treasure to reshape the body for his highness. Hearing this, Yeliki immediately became angry. He pulled up the collar of the little eunuch in front of him and looked at him fiercely, wishing to tear the guy in front of him into pieces. The reason why he has been kept until now is because his injury has not healed yet, and Dijo cannot guard him. He needs an insider to block him in front, so that no one can notice that there is anything wrong with him. Otherwise, just because he dares to stab himself, I should cut him into pieces and cut him into pieces with 1,000 knives? My uncle has already arranged a wedding for me yesterday. We will be getting married on the 15th day of the first lunar month this year. How can I, a disabled person, hide this from anyone? As he spoke, he pushed the little eunuch to the ground fiercely and stared at him fiercely. You are a bastard who deserves 1,000 cuts. I should have had you chopped into pieces. The young eunuch's face suddenly turned pale, his eyes rolled around, and he quickly got up from the ground and said, Your Highness, this matter can be handled, it's easy to handle. Ha, of course it's easy to handle. I'll have you taken out now, chopped into pieces, and fed to the dogs. Yeliki immediately laughed angrily, his face becoming more and more gloomy. The little eunuch hurriedly shook his head and explained, Your Highness, what I mean is that your wedding will be easy to handle. After saying that, he stepped forward and whispered, His Royal Highness was seriously injured that day. In order to save his life, he had to cut off the dragon sac. But the young man used his measures carefully. Although the dragon sac was gone, the dragon root was not damaged, and outsiders could not see it. I have a method. After the little eunuch muttered a lot of words in Yeliki's ear, Yeliki looked at him suspiciously. You sure? Of course, this is absolutely true. After the little eunuch finished speaking, his voice changed, but it's very troublesome to prepare this magical medicine. Yeliki sneered when he saw this, patted the kid on the shoulder, took off a key from his waist and handed it to him. Xiao Chang, just do it. No matter how much it costs, you can get it from the back room. Just let me see the results. Don't worry, Your Highness, I will make sure to do a good job in this small matter. Yeliki nodded, he could leave. After the young eunuch walked out of the room, a group of eunuchs and maids soon gathered around him. Greetings to Eunuch Chang. Everyone, get up. It's a cold day. Don't be so polite. Eunuch Chang held up his hands, and the maid on the side hurried forward to support him carefully. You all have to be careful lately. His Highness is in a bad mood. If any of you make His Highness angry, then even if the prince comes, he won't be able to save your lives. Yes, yes, yes. Everyone's head was pounding, and they lowered their heads to listen to Eunuch Chang's holy teachings. They actually don't know the origin of Eunuch Chang, but they have been keeping him with them since His Highness returned from the southern expedition. The day before yesterday, when the chief manager saw him stealing the roast meat sent by the prince, he scolded him. As a result, he slapped him on the ground and half of his face was swollen. The strangest thing is that instead of pursuing the matter, His Highness asked the housekeeper to go back to the countryside to retire. This incident really surprised everyone. Since then, this eunuch Chang has become the general manager of the mansion. No one dares to easily provoke the famous person in front of His Highness. Fortunately, although eunuch Chang has a weird temper, he is a good person. As long as they finish their work honestly and don't cheat in front of this father-in-law, they usually only get a few scoldings and a few greetings to their ancestors. It's over. At least in terms of eating and getting cards, this eunuch Chang never did anything to them. Instead, he often distributed the filial piety money sent by those outside to everyone. After such a comparison, everyone still felt that eunuch Chang was much better than the former general manager. Okay, Your Highness is about to have dinner, you should do whatever you want. After eunuch Chang stepped back, he looked around, turned around, and walked towards the inner treasury at the rear. Taking out the key and opening the door of the warehouse, eunuch Chang glanced sideways and saw boxes of all sizes in the warehouse neatly placed on the ground. Suddenly he narrowed his eyes, closed the door, walked to the box, opened a box and took a look, and his eyes suddenly gleamed. Looking at these treasures in the box, I couldn't help but take a deep breath. Boss. Now, we can make a fortune. Chang Wahen took out a fiery red coral from the box and held it in the palm of his hand. If this thing was placed outside, it would be a priceless treasure, but here it was thrown in the corner like rotten cabbage and no one cared about it. Chang Wahen rummaged around and found a lot of good things. For example, a pearl of the East China Sea, the bearer can greatly enhance his or her lifespan. There are also fist-sized demon pills. A pill that enhances cultivation. Centuries-old ginseng. Some lost sword skills in the world and so on. There are countless treasures, and most of them were given to Yeliki by Xiaolishan. As the saying goes, compare goods to death, and compare people to death. The treasures here are all rare and rare. They are probably richer than the inventory of the Northern Man Emperor, let alone other princes. It can be seen how happy it is to have a strong natal family as a backstage. It's a pity that God is fair. What is given in this place must be taken back in other places. These treasures were far less important to Yeliki than his own sexual happiness. When everyone heard about Yeliki's tragic situation, they couldn't help but observe 3 seconds of silence for Yeliki. Chang Wazi was the only one who was particularly excited about this. He kept talking about how successful his surgery was and how superb his skills were. He was not like some people who were both good at food and fun-loving. They still had no conscience at all when they didn't have diamonds and still took on the porcelain work. No. Ignore thousands of words. Su Tong saw that Chang Wahen was getting more and more excited as he talked, so he could only say with a dark face, "You go look for it first and make a list. As for the talisman, I will give it to you when I finish what I am doing. Make a few talismans." After saying that, Su Tong silently changed the permissions of Chang Wogu's team channel to only speak once per hour. Boom. The carriage suddenly shook a few times, and then the one-eyed dragon Mao Bo on the shaft shouted loudly, "Marquis Xinwu is inspecting the prison, but he still doesn't open the door. Please show me the oracle." The guards on the heavenly prison were not intimidated by Mao Bo's words. After all, this was the heavenly prison, and the people imprisoned here were all guilty of heinous crimes. Without the handwriting, they would not dare to open the door rashly even if the current emperor came in person. Of course, the emperor would never come to such a ghost place. "Master Marquis, use the token given to you by the crown prince." Mao Bo opened the car curtain and said to Su Tong. Su Tong took out the token that Su Fan had given him before and handed it to Mao Bo. When he looked out through the car curtain that Mao Bo opened, he saw the evil spirit in front of him. The entire castle is like a huge urn city. Even without using the Minji and Kimin, Su Tong could see the huge evil energy gathering in the sky prison and not dissipating, making it even more terrifying. Strangeness. Su Tong secretly thought strangely, with Su La's strength, he is fully capable of setting up formations to draw out the evil spirits in the prison. How come he suppresses them here every year, and now makes this place look like this? Open the door. At this time, after the guard saw Su La's warrant clearly, he asked someone to open the door. Buzz. The 3-foot-thick door was slowly opened by more than a dozen strong men. For a moment, even a figure like Mao Bo, who had reached the pinnacle of Taoism, couldn't help but shiver. Although the 2 horses pulling the cart were blindfolded, they refused to go any further when they got here, letting Mao Bo's whip crackle on the horses' backs. Forget it, I'll go in by myself, you go back first. When Su Tong saw this, he motioned to Mao Bo to go back first, went in for a walk and then went back. Yes. Mao Bo didn't talk nonsense. After Su Tong got off the carriage, he drove his horse back. In fact, if it weren't for Su Fan's order, Mao Bo would not be willing to come to this place. After all, it is a place with great resentment. Although cultivation can protect the body, it will also invisibly weaken people's luck. It is said that the guards here are carefully selected and pay attention to their birth dates. If they are not determined, they will not survive here for 3 days. Su Tong stepped on the bluestone bricks and stepped inside. As soon as he entered the door, he felt that the aura around him suddenly became oppressive. The black stone tiles have a polished color, but if you look closely, you will feel that the stone tiles are covered with a thick layer of blood. Roar. At this time, there were roars of tigers above Su Tong's head. It was obvious that the evil spirit here had interfered with his destiny. Fortunately, although this is not the yin time, the yin tiger can drive away all evils. My destiny is not afraid of this kind of evil spirit, and I have the ability to ward off all evils. And he himself is even more fearless. With the pure yang energy rising all over his body, stepping into the gate of Tianlao will severely suppress the evil energy surging throughout Tianlao. The eyes of the surrounding guards were all fixed on Su Tong, with a strange look in their eyes. As guards who guard here all year round, their luck and destiny have long been integrated with this prison. The evil aura in Tianlao was suddenly suppressed, and everyone immediately felt a lightness in their bodies, as if 1,000 jin weight had been lifted off their shoulders. I'm Lord Song Changming, pay my respects to the Marquis. Unexpectedly, the person responsible for guarding the prison turned out to be an old lame man. Su Tong looked the other person up and down and asked, "Is your name your real name, or did someone change it for you later?" Master Marquis is indeed a divine figure. I can't hide this from you. Master Kuazu changed this name for me. He said that I would be in prison and this name would keep me safe. Really? Su Tong used his life icon to take a look, and found that this old guy's luck was extremely weird. It was not like a normal person's fate at all. His luck had been filled with terrifying evil spirits. It was a miracle that such a person could survive. Not only him, but also the guards. They seemed to have completely developed a symbiotic relationship with this prison. Once they leave the heavenly prison or the heavenly prison is destroyed, they will inevitably die. Su Tong felt strange in his heart, but he did not break the relationship. He only said, I am here to inspect, and I would like to ask you to lead the way. Hey, good, good, good. Lord Marquis, it's really great that you can come here. In front of you, Xianguan is just like a grain of pearl. I would like to lend you auspicious words and say that Xianguan will have a long life. Although Song Changming was disabled, his speech was very interesting. If it had been anyone else, he might have agreed. But Su Tong didn't dare to shout. It's not that he doesn't have enough rank, but there's something weird about this guy's name. If you call him longevity, you are actually sacrificing your own luck and longevity to make up for it. This kind of routine has been played by my master before him. I just don't know if this person is sincere or unintentional. Su Tong's expression is slightly serious and he looks businesslike. Master Song is too polite, but since I am ordered to patrol, let's keep it commensurate with my official position. That's it? That's it? Song Changming nodded quickly, but under his head, there was a somewhat guilty look in his eyes. As Song Changming led the way down, the cell doors in front of him were opened one by one. Every time a door was opened, the evil aura in front of him became stronger. If Su Tong's aura hadn't been so strong, ordinary people would have already started to feel dizzy and have ringing ears when they walked here. There are 3 floors in this sky jail. There are 72 prisoners on the first floor, 38 prisoners on the second floor, and the third floor is a black cell with only 3 people inside. Song Changming explained to Su Tong as he walked. This huge prison only holds a few hundred prisoners in total, which sounds ridiculous. But when I think about it carefully, I'm afraid that 72 and 36 correspond to Tiangang Earth Evil, and the 3 people on the bottom level may have something else going on. These numbers obviously cannot be a coincidence. 1 carat and another pit. So it is natural to imagine where the previous people went. After the 2 passed through the last cell door, they finally entered the cell in the sky prison, which was much cleaner than he thought. There were a few prisoners sitting sparsely in the cell. They seemed to have noticed someone coming, and they looked up numbly. Their eyes were cloudy and there was almost no charm at all. Su Tong noticed that the palms, temples, and even joints of these prisoners showed signs of martial arts training, but they now had no cultivation at all. Su Tong continued to walk down, but he didn't know that just before he had gone far, the prisoner suddenly jumped up, bumped his head against the cell pillar, and yelled heartbreakingly. "Su Lai, you will not die a good death. You betrayed your trust and harmed our brothers. Don't forget that the elders of the Xinyan sect gave you orders. Your fate is coming. We brothers are waiting for that day." When Su Tong heard this, he turned around and saw Song Changming hurriedly signaling the guards around him with his eyes. The guard raised his long stick and knocked the man to the ground with the stick. "Master Marquis, don't blame these people. They are all bandits who rebelled before. It is not a pity to die. There were originally 308 people, but now they are the only ones left alive." Song Changming stood aside and explained. Su Tong showed an indifferent expression on the surface, but from the corner of his eye he glanced at the location of the cell and kept it in mind, intending to find an opportunity to see what the calamity this person was talking about was. "Hey, my house is a new building. My family is the only one on this floor. None of the other 3 households have moved in. I don't know the other neighbors downstairs. I'm sorry to say hello. I can only blame myself for thinking of stocking up on a pack of cigarettes. I didn't think of buying a few AA batteries. I'll try it with a pack of cigarettes tomorrow and see if anyone has batteries and I'll replace them with 2.